Welcome to the European Commission Conference, Upskilling and Reskilling in the Post-COVID Era, Fostering New Services and Job Creation. We are very pleased to have you all on board, and we do hope to share and create knowledge and skills for the future together with you the 2 coming days. My name is Sturesson from Sweden. I will be your host and moderator. I'm a strategy advisor to nations, cities, and private sector clients, mostly in the area of social intelligence and strategic navigation and leadership. I'm also the founder of Reskilling, Advice from the Future. Let me now set the scene and give you 3 important perspectives on this conference and some comments on the word skills before we give the floor and screen to our great speakers. First, a process perspective. In 2018, the European Commission started an initiative on Skills4Industry to keep Europe on the edge of skills. Today's event is a part of the Skills4Industry 2030 initiative. But also in the pre-COVID conference 2019, we discussed visions for skills and upgrades of the European workforce and how to mobilize efficient public funding and incentives on all levels. Now the European Union has launched a very ambitious, I would say, policy agenda for 2030 to address the challenges of the COVID crisis and sharpen the skills agenda dramatically. This agenda includes the European Skills Agenda with the Pact for Skills. And number 2, the European Pillar of Social Rights Action Plan. 3, the Digital Decade, Shaping the Europe Digital Future. And 4, the updated European Industrial Strategy. The second perspective is a perspective on trends. Trends like new geopolitics, uncertainty and polarization as a part of the new normal. But also demographic aging, sustainability and climate issues, but not least disruptive technology accelerating innovation and the pace of change. But also the emergence of digital platform economy. And of course, skills as the new global currency. But not least, behaviors and change in the attitudes of the coming generation. And this creates a real big disruption in the landscape of education and training. Finally, the third perspective, COVID-19. The pandemic disrupted our society, economy, and life, from which Europe, America, and China are already recovering, although at a different speed. But COVID can also be looked upon and must be looked upon as a real future accelerator regarding future of technology, future of work and skills. Not only skills for digital remote work. We can say COVID had been pushing us to make EU more competitive and create a larger talent pool. Regarding the word skills, it comes from the 12th century and from the Swedish, Icelandic, and Norwegian language, and means literally the power of discernment. We need skills to discern between functional stupidity and solid wisdom in today's knowledge society. We often hear we are overeducated but underskilled. So now is the time to support upskilling and reskilling, which means we will get right-skilled. Conclusion is, be a right-skilling ambassador and be a CSO, Chief Skills Officer, and define HR as human rights skilling. This, by the way, requires a T-shaped skills. Having said that, let me now welcome our keynote speaker, EU Commissioner, Mr. Nicolas Schmit. He's strongly committed to sharpen the EU skills policies and implement effective action plans. Mr. Schmit will speak on the European skills agenda and the challenges Europe is facing in the post-COVID era. Dear Commissioner, the screen is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, today's high-level conference provides the ideal platform to showcase the urgent need for a fundamental shift in the way we think of skills against the background of a changing economy and our changing world of work. The rapid shift towards a climate-neutral Europe and the digital transformation are changing the way we work, learn, take part in society, and lead our everyday lives. COVID-19 has had a profound impact on millions of people in the EU who have lost their job or experienced significant income losses. Last month, at the Porto Social Summit, EU leaders recognized this challenge and welcomed 3 headline targets for Europe to reach in 2030. One is the need to boost lifelong learning and have at least 60% of adults participate in training each year. This paradigm shift in skills policy was kicked off 1 year ago when we adopted the European Skills Agenda, a 5-year plan which sets out clear objectives and actions. Since then, we have delivered on many actions. The Council adopted a new recommendation on vocational education and training, as well as a reinforced youth guarantee. These will modernize vocational education and training systems and provide new employment prospects for the young generation. The new Europass platform is helping people every day to reach work and learning opportunities. Our specialized agency, CEDEFOP, has unveiled its new Skills 08, an online platform providing real-time skills intelligence at regional level. This helps everybody, from the worker to the business and the employment services, to know what skills are needed where. Together with Commissioner Breton, I have been meeting CEOs, social partners, and other stakeholders to make pledge for and upskilling of the workforce. Already now, these are worth several billions of euros. The Skills Pact is an important framework for reskilling and upskilling, which is a fundamental priority for Europe's industry. The industry is in a deep transformation process, digital and green, and it is also an indispensable part of Europe's economy and job market. Finally, before the end of the year, we will put forward 2 new initiatives to empower individuals to learn. One on individual learning accounts to make learning a regular part of life for everyone. And another on micro-credentials to value the outcome of short training courses. I hope that this conference will inspire and encourage you to take part in this paradigm shift on skills. Thank you.
I would like to thank Commissioner Schmit for his very inspiring introductory speech, which is a very clear and good point of departure for the conference we are having. Think about this ILA, individual learning accounts, and also short training courses. There's so much to take into consideration. Thank you very much. Now it's time for the Pact for Skills and the updated industrial strategy. We will hear about key issues of European policies and action plans regarding the Pact for Skills, and this will be shared by Manuela Geleng, Director, European Commission, DG Employment, and André Richier at European Commission, DG Grow. André is replacing Ulla Engelmann, who unfortunately could not make it today. André is in charge of the Skills4Industry initiative at the European Commission. Dear Manuela, the time has come for you to share with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And first of all, let me say that I'm very pleased to be with you here today. I should start by echoing actually the messages that were just made by Commissioner Schmit, that we all have to cope with the rapid shift to a climate neutral Europe and to embrace the digital transformation. It's about showing resilience, and it's about making sure that the workforce is equipped with the right skills. Needless to say that skills are key for our future and definitely are not new on the political agenda, as was just said. As recently as last month, European leaders set an ambitious target for the next to be reached in the next 10 years. That is that 60% of adults train at least every year. So, to realize this ambition, one of the key goals is at European level, the Pact for Skills. So it makes us join forces, and because skills make or break an economy, as was highlighted by the Vice President of the European Forum at the Vocational Education and Training during the last Pact, during the launch of the Pact last November. And indeed, I think these words are very important because if we look now at what the Pact wants to achieve, the Pact aims to bring together, as I just said, all the actors from different perspectives, from different ecosystems, from different backgrounds, and to make a united commitment for concrete action points forward in terms of up and reskilling. Its overall goal, the goal of the Pact, is to maximize the impact and effectiveness of skills investment. As you heard, Commissioner Schmit and Commissioner Breton are working together to engage stakeholders across the 14 industrial ecosystems in the EU industrial strategy, and André Richier, who will speak in a few minutes, will be developing this further by promoting the development of large-scale skills partnerships. The Pact also gathers and inspires concrete commitments in terms of actual training from regions and local authorities, social partners, training organizations, so a wide variety of stakeholders. So what do we mean actually by concrete commitments? We mean any action that will help up and reskill the workforce. It can be opportunities for employees, tailored training and career development, whether for those at the early stage of their career or further down their career path. Well, you could tell me, but we are doing already so much. Why has the Pact an added value? First, I think I would say that yes, there might be already some employers, and there are some employers, and we will hear from them today, and other stakeholders that take action for up and reskilling the workforce, that recognize how vital upskilling and reskilling is for the economy. But this is not enough if we want to be the competitive and resilient economy that we aspire to be. Here you see what are the key principles that everybody that signs up to the Charter adheres to in terms of promoting a culture of lifelong learning without barriers, without discrimination, building partnerships, and ensuring that there is a monitoring of skills that are being provided in terms of training. You also get, at European level, we are there to support you in networking, exchanging your experience, your knowledge, so that we can learn faster all together. And we are also there to help you get more information on how to access the unprecedented EU funds available to support these two twin transitions that we have before us, the green and the digital. Indeed, we need everything, national, public and private funding, but also European funding. And if you see what the Union has adopted in terms of recovery and resilience facility, and you see behind me the actual name, Next Generation EU, with an amount of almost 700 billion, you see one of the aims of the Recovery and Resilience Facility is precisely about upskilling and reskilling. Besides that, we have also REACT-EU that can support skills development and mitigate the negative impact that the pandemic had. We have, as you see on the slide, InvestEU, with a special window dedicated to social investment and skills. We have the Just Transition Fund. And of course, we have the European Social Fund, which can be used and should be used, and I invite you to use, to upskill and reskill. So now, the key word is building cooperation. The Pact is about joining forces. And if we can move to the next slide, yes, you see that the Pact is not a lonely initiative somewhere. It is embedded in a number of initiatives where probably many of you are already involved. Let me highlight a few of those. So, the European Alliance for Apprenticeships, for instance, it's an important part of national, the European Alliance of Apprenticeships calls for developing more, offering more apprenticeships. And apprenticeships, as we know, are an important part of national training and employment strategy, and these are really a valuable route for young people to find their way to the labor market. I should mention also the blueprints for sectoral cooperation on skills that help industrial ecosystems to build further their cooperation, to design their skill needs, to identify their skill needs. And also the centers of vocational excellence that bring together vocational education, research, innovation, smart specialization strategies, and the related stakeholders.
Dear Manuela, can you
bring
try to come to an
vocational
end?
education and training forward? And finally, the Digital Skills and Job Coalition that develops skills gaps by bringing together member states, companies, and organizations.
Manuela, can I ask
if
you
I
to
want
come to close?
pass a final message today, is that we need to work together on this. I am proud to say that the Pact has already been adhered to by almost 400 signatories, and we have 130 commitments covering hundreds of thousands of training opportunities. It's a lot, but we need to do more, and we are there to help you realize and succeed in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuela, for this very clear message to us. Let us now ask André Richier to share some additional perspectives on this topic. Please, André.
Yeah, thank you very much. At the beginning of last year, the Commission adopted the new industrial strategy, which included action to support the green and the digital transitions. But the pandemic has drastically affected the speed and the scale of this transformation. Industry is going through rapid change and unprecedented transformation on a global scale. We are also increasingly witnessing disparities growing between sectors and regions. So therefore, last month, the Commission presented the new measures in an update of the industrial strategy. They include the co-creation of transition pathways in partnership with stakeholders, starting with tourism and energy-intensive industries, and the provision of a coherent regulatory framework to achieve the objective of the digital decade and the ambition to reduce CO2 emission by at least 55% by 2030. The Industrial Forum would support the development of these transition pathways. But a key tool for the recovery is to increase public and private investment in upskilling and reskilling. We need to support job retention and new job opportunities. The World Economic Forum is calling for a skills revolution. Several of the world's largest employers made pledges to help their workforce build new skills. However, only 17% of companies made meaningful investment in up and reskilling initiatives. How do we dare to take care of SMEs and self-employed in those circumstances? Because meeting the objective of the European Skills Agenda would require an additional investment of 48 billion annually. To address the challenge of this magnitude, traditional approach won't be sufficient. Industry needs to join forces with public authorities, social partners, education and training providers working together in large-scale skills partnership at all levels. The new industrial strategy is framed around 14 major industrial ecosystems. You can see them on these slides. Roundtable on skills are being organized by Commissioner Nicolas Schmit and Thierry with key stakeholders from these ecosystems. The last one actually will take place in July. These roundtables contribute to the design of upskilling and reskilling transition pathways and the development of large-scale skills partnership in each ecosystem under the Pact for Skills. As mentioned by Manuela, the Pact for Skills helps mobilize stakeholders to upskill and reskill the workforce. By joining the Pact, stakeholders will get access to knowledge, networking, guidance, and funding. Last month, a platform has been launched to provide support service on digital skills and jobs. Some ecosystems already announced commitment, for example, in the automotive, microelectronics, aerospace, and defense industry. In automotive, this next slide, the ambition to upskill 5% of the workforce each year would result in around 700,000 people to be upskilled, representing an investment of 7 billion. In microelectronics, the ambition of the partnership represents an investment of 2 billion, providing upskilling and reskilling opportunities for more than 250,000 people. In aerospace and defense, the ambition is to upskill around 6% of the workforce each year, reaching 200,000 people, and reskills 300,000 people, representing an investment of 1 billion. These partnerships are building upon the activities of the Blueprint for Sectoral Cooperation on Skills. The Blueprint is the cornerstone of the EU sectoral strategy for skills. It has been implemented since 2018 in several pilot sectors. As you can see, in automotive, the partnership built upon two blueprints. Drives provide skills intelligence in the automotive sector and free online courses during the pandemic. Allbats provides skills intelligence and is developing educational and training courses for the batteries for electromobility sector. Each blueprint is also contributing to the design of a long-term strategy, an action plan to be rolled out at national, regional, and local level. Within the Pact for Skills, this approach will be expanded and open to more sectors. There is currently a call for proposal open to all ecosystems. But clusters, digital hub, center of vocational excellence constitute an important component of the European industrial landscape. There are over 3,000 specialized clusters in Europe. You can see some examples on these slides. Clusters have particularly reach out to SMEs, which they can connect to larger players. Their strength is that by definition, they bring together industry with education and training providers. There are also places for close cooperation between companies in related ecosystems. In addition, they are part of large European networks, the European Cluster Alliance, the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. Finally, cities are also key in this major reskilling effort. They know best the local needs. They are excellent examples of reskilling initiative. This is why the European Intelligent Cities Challenge produced a guide for reskilling. It will be published by mid-July. In conclusion, I would say that in the emerging post-pandemic world, the EU and its citizens had to find their place. The issue is not whether the educational and training agenda is dictated by businesses, of course, but whether we can find innovative solutions together in which education and training can address the needs of our citizens and equip them to face the challenge of their daily life in the period that is ahead. We need to find in each ecosystem the leaders, the structures, the instrument to implement solutions in time and extend their benefit to SMEs in the whole value chains. We are working on this. We plan to announce a second wave of large-scale skills partnership before the end of the year, and this conference is addressing a key issue at the heart of the policy challenge of the EU. I hope that you will feed us with your discussion so that we can see better the opportunities to support successful upskilling and reskilling effort in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuela and André, for helping us to grasp the key points and messages of the European policies and Pact for Skills, which really sets us in a good context for our conference. We now move over to upskilling and reskilling for shared prosperity, a stakeholder's view. We will listen to several stakeholders presenting their views and concrete business cases on upskilling and reskilling for shared prosperity. And we will start with Thierry Baril, Chief HR Officer at Airbus. He will speak about the strategy and activities for upskilling the workforce to make jobs future-proof at Airbus and, of course, elsewhere. Please go live, Thierry. Thierry?
Is it better? Can you hear me? Sorry, I got a double mute. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity of presenting the challenges that Airbus is facing when it comes to skills development in our industry. So 2020 and still true for 21 has been extremely challenging. Of course, we have all been heavily impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. The aviation has been severely impacted, and it's not over, but honestly, we can feel some good signs and positive signs of recovery for the future, fortunately. So now thinking about the future and looking at what we can do in order to really recover from this terrible situation, the first priority for us is, of course, to put behind us the COVID-19, as we have been able to adapt the company to this new context, to this new situation. Preparing the future, because we are now really looking for the decarbonization of the aviation. This is a subject which has somewhere taken even a bigger importance during the crisis, and it has certainly given, as in every crisis, an opportunity of making some breakthroughs and accelerating our future developments into that direction. The next generation of products will be, of course, decarbonized, as I said, but they will be also digital native. And they will involve a lot of new technologies, which will have to be further developed into our industry. And of course, behind, we will call for a need for additional competencies, additional skills, in order just to be able to face all these different new programs, which will come during the next decades in our industry. On top, I'm thinking about Europe, and I'm thinking about how can we enable European strategy autonomy. We are also specialized in military products, in defense activities. It's extremely important that we secure and protect our sovereignty in Europe. And when I look at the future programs which are in front of us, be it with the FCAS, the future air combat systems, or the Eurodrome, or the new solutions which will come for the space sectors, we will need also certainly to think about the new type of skills which will involve new technologies, new competencies compared to today. So this is what is in front of us. And of course, the COVID-19 is unfortunately not totally over, but it's really the right time to reaccelerate for the future such developments. As I said, we have been impacted during the last 18 months, and certainly it had an impact on the volume of hiring that we should have done without such a crisis, but also on the development internally of new competencies that we will have certainly invested on when we were finally, with this crisis, obliged to look at our cash containment and making some savings and not being able to invest what we wanted to do. Of course, it's important that we not think also only about Airbus, but about the supply chain. We are in a very big sector. We have all been impacted in the same direction. I think it's important that we can continue to co-invest. And on behalf of our aerospace and defense sector, I want, of course, to push the idea that upskilling, reskilling, skills development is one of our priorities for the future. And Airbus, of course, tries to harmonize different initiatives at the time being. We are doing things internally at Airbus, and we have already invested a lot in order to prepare some future generations of skills when it comes to artificial intelligence, when it comes to cloud architecture, when it comes to data science. All these things are known, and this is something we do internally. But it's not enough, and we really expect to have different partnerships. As an example, like the one that we have just joined with the German-French Academy for the Industry in the framework of the Industry 4.0, under the lead of two very, I would say, well-known institutes of education, the Institut des Mines Télécom in France and TUM, so the university is a technical university of München, which have developed a new framework of collaboration, which is certainly putting closer the industry and the academics in order to develop programs related to the green aviation, to data science, to cloud architecture and technologies, to artificial intelligence, and so on. And this is exactly the type of things we would like to continue to do. But it's also fair to say that maybe linked again to the recent period we have been facing, there were not so many opportunities of having one way altogether to develop such, I would say, learning developments, program developments. And this is a call for action that I would like again to make today for all of us, just to make sure that we have in mind that in the aerospace sector, we have 600,000 people working in Europe, that at least 1/3 of this population may develop some new skills into the future in order to face, and it's a positive news, the future programs that we will have to deal with. And at the same time, having in mind that we have maybe not yet implemented all the necessary initiatives and actions in order to make it happen. So we are ready to co-fund, but we need the European organizations in order to helping us to have something which is structured, well organized, and this co-investment still has to be confirmed, has to be done, and it needs to be also aligned because there are different initiatives coming at different national levels, even regional levels. And I think it's extremely important that we will be able together to articulate those different investments and fundings in order to have the best way for the future, developing, upskilling, reskilling the employees of the aerospace and defense sectors we will need to get such new skills. So this is what I wanted to say in this opening speech, and thank you again for this opportunity. It's perfectly on time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we are on time, and great to listen to you. This is a really great presentation of how to put strategy into action. So let me also now ask you, Thierry, what have been most serious barriers to overcome within Airbus regarding upskilling more people and to increase employability from your point of view?
And again, it might be a repetition, but the period that we have just been experiencing was certainly, yes, extremely challenging and a real barrier to develop the things as it was initially seen for the future. One very big challenge for us was how do we manage to ensure that the knowledge existing at Airbus will be secured when you have a big adaptation plan, many people leaving in early retirements, mainly, because I'm proud to say that in Europe, all our departures have been done without any forced redundancy, so it has been done on a voluntary basis. But of course, many senior people left the company. And for us, the biggest challenge was certainly to ensure the transfer of knowledge, and this is where we have put the maximum of energy during the last month. And as a consequence, an impact on other investments we could have done for the middle and long term. We were really focused on the short term, so I consider it's done. And now we are back in order to think about the middle and the long term. And I think we can be extremely optimistic because we are attractive as a sector, but we are not alone. We are not alone because we are now looking for competencies which are not totally dedicated to the aerospace sector. All the corporations are looking for the same type of profiles. It's well known. So how do we make the difference? How do we ensure that we are still as attractive as we were in the past? Because, of course, many people observed that the aviation industry was so hit by the crisis that maybe it was a certain risk to join us. And, of course, I want to say there is no risk when we look ahead of us into the future. There are plenty of many opportunities, and such partnerships are normally made in order to secure the development of new skills.
Can I also say and ask you, was there anything that was much easier than you thought? It just happened. What would that be? So,
I think it has been a so big acceleration of the digital practice that fortunately we were already ready for digital learning at Airbus, but it has been just an incredible improvement of the use of the digital learning solutions of the company. We delivered in 2020 1 million hours of training. We have increased by 74% the volume of learning through digital means. And honestly, 2 years ago, I would have never made such a bet. So in fact, when the people were in partial unemployment or working remotely, they were able to continue to develop their own skills. And I think it has been certainly one of the good opportunities that we have been facing during the last month.
Thank you very much for those very insightful comments, Thierry. And we now move on to speak to our friend here, Frank Heemskerk. He's the Secretary General of European Roundtable for Industry, ERT. He will be speaking about reskilling for employment, a concrete industry-focused initiative on reskilling people who are unemployed or in jobs at risk. So, please, Frank, go ahead with us and tell us.
Yes, good afternoon to you all, and I hope I'm not double muted and you can hear me well. It seems so. Yes, I saw thumbs going up. And we are here because we all care about the big challenge we face, which is about, greening our economy, becoming climate neutral, managing the digital transition, that all require new skills, new tools, new applications, and we need to learn. However, we're facing a gap. There is a big challenge between, on the one hand, the skill supply, and on the other hand, demand. According to McKinsey, the Future Work report, at least 100 million people in Europe need to be upskilled or reskilled by 2030. 100 million people. So that's a daunting task. And these are pre-COVID numbers, and I'm pretty sure they went up. And already also today, the skills gap is very real. Recently, 40% of the workers in the EU reported a mismatch between their own skills and their job duties. Or for example, in France, 40% of the vacancies were hard to fill, while there was an unemployment rate. So in that sense, we're facing a challenge. And also the ERT, our member companies, we recently did a survey, and 85% of our CEOs revealed that they believe that skills development requires immediate or short-term action. It's about finding, attracting, and retaining specific job profiles, efficiently reskilling people with different profiles, transforming the business culture towards a more digital savvy, disruptive mindset, but also coping with the high change of the high pace of changing competence requirements. And what did we do at ERT? We reviewed over 200 existing reskilling initiatives throughout Europe. It's a book, it's almost like a Bible of those 200 initiatives. And many of them are great, but they're small, they're scattered, they're fragmented. There is a lack of comprehensive end-to-end reskilling that deals with the individual needs, which a lot of the initiatives are input-driven. They reward training hours rather than successful candidate placements or retention, so instead of outcome. There are multiple uncoordinated initiatives, sector-based, company-based, country-based, philanthropy-based, with limited cross-sectoral knowledge sharing. There is a huge information overload about training, information asymmetry, reskilling services offered by multiple actors. So it's there is a gap, but there's also a market failure. So why are we as ERT involved? Well, let me also be clear here. We are not asking for money for ERT member companies. Airbus, Daimler, Ericsson, we will take care of ourselves and of our own employees, because that's what the companies have been doing over decades. But as Europe, as European companies with leading multinationals in Europe, we can only be successful if Europe is successful. So we're not into this for philanthropy, we're also into this for self-interest. This is a challenge for Europe, which we need to tackle. Skills development is of strategic importance for Europe, and European companies can only be long-term successful when Europe is successful. So we have a gap, we have market failure, we have purpose. So what are we going to do? We've identified 3 elements in our Reskilling for Employment initiative, which is the end-to-end element. Reskilling needs to be based on an individual's skill set and directed towards a new occupation or a job opportunity. So no learning for the sake of learning, end-to-end. Secondly, we think it's important to have it cross-sectoral as well, from banking, healthcare to manufacturing. They all need to deal with digital skills, and they need to move from one sector to another. And finally, also pan-European. Of course, local and proximity is important, but much of the content of a reskilling program can be used also in other geographies. Transnational mobility is even a side benefit. And that's why we've launched the Reskilling for Employment on May the 7th in Porto at the Social Summit. And this year we will start 3 pilots in Portugal, in Spain, and in Sweden. And what does it contain? We're using advanced technologies to track data and to get a clear understanding where supply and demand diverge, what type of training and instruction is needed, real-time tracking of placement and retention. So 1, technology and data. Secondly, we will offer a tech-enabled, centralized E2E reskilling platform that will serve as a one-stop shop for candidates. Thirdly, we would like to mobilize all actors in the reskilling ecosystem. We're joining everybody who's listening. We're asking them to join and to partner up. And finally, we want to ensure the impact of public investments in the reskilling by providing effective solutions with measurable outcomes. So let me conclude. The availability of skills is essential for Europe's success. There is a gap, there's market failure, end-to-end is crucial, from input to outcome, and let's cooperate everybody together to make sure we can deliver. Thank you for that.
Thanks a lot, Frank. Really interesting, and not least how we got from this input to the outcome and impact indicators. But I would like to ask you, how does R4E, Reskilling for Employment, actually plan to finance its coming activities?
Yeah, well, actually, the good thing is that the business case pays off. if you look to social security cost of people who are at risk or unemployed, and if they find a job and start paying taxes, of course, there are huge revenues for us as a whole, for society, and also for the individual people. But of course, there are also costs attached to it. Our estimates, and again, we're working also together, for example, with McKinsey, is that it's over 3,000 euro per person. And we think we should team up here. Governments, the people themselves, the employers. Again, let's make sure that the financing is based on outcomes. Let's also use maybe new instruments like social impact bonds and measure employment success. We are not, let's say, dogmatic in the funding in the financing solution. We know we need to work locally, and that's why we've started these 3 pilots. Again, in Portugal, in Sweden, and in Spain, we can learn and we can share these practices. But one of the problems is there is no European approach. So those people within the Commission, I do think it would make sense to fund a few more of the pilots to avoid that everybody has a good idea, has to knock on all the doors of the 26 member states. We can lower transaction costs by co-financing also from a European perspective. Again, this is not for the big companies. This is because we care and we think it's important that Europe delivers.
Do you have any specific types of prototypes or pilot processes you would like to share with us? What do you think could be a good example of those processes?
Yes, so we've developed many prototypes. I'm more than willing, and I've also shared the link to the full research. Again, we've looked to 200 various projects, and they're all wonderful. Don't get me wrong there. But it's fragmented. It's difficult to find. Knowledge, success, and failures is not being shared. And that's what we are willing to do through the Reskilling for Employment platform we're launching in these 3 countries. And I invite everybody who is interested to reach out to the ERT and to join.
Thank you so much, Frank, for what you shared with us. Really good. So let us now move and welcome our next speaker, and that's Isabelle Barthes. She's the Deputy Secretary General at Industry All Europe and represents a trade union perspective on creating a smart workforce for the future, ensuring lifelong employability throughout training for future-proof occupational pathways. So the screen is yours, Isabelle. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And sorry for the very long title for this paper, but you know, sometimes in Europe, you have to come across a lot of circumvolution before you agree on a common term. But basically what we mean by that is employability. And I'd like to start by saying that I subscribed totally to the previous statement made by the speakers before me, actually, because the challenges are, as have been very well described. I mean, we are facing an unprecedented need to train more people and more rapidly. And this is valid for all our industry, whether it's aerospace, whether it is automotive, whether it's energy intensive. And we have to join forces to meet these challenges because at the end of the day, it's about workers' employability, but it's also about company success, and it's about the prosperity of Europe. So yes, we are facing an unprecedented need to train more people than ever and at an even higher speed. And just to give you a couple of examples, a new comprehensive study on employment in the automotive sector shows that electromobility demands the and the upskilling of 1.6 million workers in Europe in the coming years. The EU Battery Alliance recognized that 800 new skilled workers are needed in for the new EU ambition for battery. And according to a new Pact for Skills in the offshore renewable energy, we will need more than 50,000 skilled workers in that sector in the next 5 years. So the question is how to do it, actually. So the first answer for us is to facilitate the smooth job-to-job transitions by organizing transition pathways between jobs. And this requires anticipation of skills need, career counseling, guidance, quality training, including validation of learning skill acquired, and flanking employment policies to enable workers transitioning smoothly from one job to another without experiencing the trauma of being unemployed. And we have already some example in Europe. We have France, for instance, we have Sweden, where there are some interesting new measures where actually it shows that it requires sufficient time, it requires adequate financing and portability of right. But organizing job-to-job transition is not enough. We also need to promote and organize continuous training on a life-to-life basis to keep up with professional development. And for that, we need to have access to upskilling on a regular basis. It has to be guaranteed by an individual right to training. And this, of course, has also to be secured by the most vulnerable workers, which tend to receive less training. Upskilling and reskilling is also a shared responsibility between companies, public authorities, trade union, and workers themselves. The employer's responsibility is to provide good quality training, as it has been mentioned, during working hours, ensure a proper validation of learning acquired, and offer career development. And social partners, employers and trade unions are best placed to identify skills need and to organize continuous training, turning training into reality and promoting a real culture of lifelong learning. And together with training providers, they also have a responsibility to co-design up and reskilling programs and ensure quality training tailor-made to national and local realities. But there is also an individual responsibility to workers to make use of these opportunities. And it's also the role of trade unions to motivate their members to engage into training. Policymakers also have a responsibility to create an enabling environment to support training, upskilling, lifelong learning, and transitions. Anticipation of skills need at all levels is a necessity, whether it's the national level, also at local level, but also at company level. And we've seen recently with initiative like the Pact for Skills that there is also a role for the European level to look at the mega trend. Finally, quality training is a priority. Training will only be attractive and successful if it leads to quality training in future-proof industry. So massive investment are also needed to create quality jobs. So, ladies and gentlemen, managing the green and digital transitions requires more than financial resources to support skills. I mean, this requires the creation of quality jobs, proper anticipation and management of change. And this has to be done through social dialogue, through dialogue between the different stakeholders. We know that there are some good experience throughout Europe, but we also know that in a number of regions, this expertise is lacking. So, and some workers are not sufficiently equipped and they risk to be left behind. And this is why actually we believe that without a real toolbox of rights that ensure smooth transition for individual, we fear that we are ahead of a fragmented Europe, and there is a high risk of social backlash. And this is why we are calling for a framework of anticipation and the management of change. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Isabelle. A very interesting perspective. Let me ask you, a few weeks ago, Industry All adopted a strong position paper on lifelong learning, and you also strongly demanded about this engagement of all stakeholders in a very active social dialogue, as you told us here, and also in a collective negotiation at all levels. But do you see still some room for improvements from your point of view? And what would that be to focus on, if so?
I mean, you're right. I mean, we are very much aligned with our interlocutor, I mean, with the employers on the necessity to train people, because this is about workers' employability, but this is also about company being successful. But as we also know in Europe, the reality is very different. I mean, the number of adults actually that undertake training on a regular basis is very low. There are huge differences in Europe, but overall this is very low. It is about 11%. So there is a lot of room for maneuver. It is also true that we are very far from a culture of lifelong learning. What we hear often from colleagues in companies is that, well, we do, when booking orders are full, there is no time for training. And when the activity is slowing down, there is no money for training. So this is actually maybe a little bit exaggerated, but we have to move away from that. We really have to create this culture of lifelong learning where actually work and training is very much combined. Mr. Baril, I was very interested to hear his comment about how successful they were to combine short-time work with training, because throughout Europe, this hasn't been the case. So we have to learn. Basically, we have to turn these good practices into standard practices.
Let me also ask you about motivation of workers to use training opportunities. And I mean, it seems to be the key task for the future. So what do you think that we need, and we in Stakers need to do differently in the future to reach the goal of 60% of the workforce to practice lifelong learning, as we talked about, by 2030? What do you really think is the thing to say? This is it.
I think, first of all, I mean, times are changing. I think nowadays workers do realize that training is not an option, because they see how the change is taking place, actually, and how the content of job is taking place. But it's also about raising awareness about the usefulness. I mean, why is it motivation to actually be trained is linked to the usefulness about training? And what often we hear is that the training is not really adequate to the evolution of technology. So the question of quality of training is really essential here. And I think when we are with technological development, which are extremely advanced, the challenge also is to make sure that in the school providers, for instance, I mean, they actually have these technologies, they can offer them as training, because then, I mean, people, I guess, will be very happy to be trained on the future technology. So it's a very important point. And motivation is also both sides. I think we have companies that are very well aware of the importance of training, especially in our sectors where the technological leadership is so important. But it is not the case in all companies, and especially it's not always easy for SMEs. So there again, we have to be innovative and widespread the good practices.
Okay, thank you very much. for this great knowledge you share with us, Isabel. We're really thankful for that. So now we move over to the next, and I'm now very pleased to welcome Mr. Bob Moritz, who joined us from US. Bob is the global chairman and CEO of PwC. He will describe to us the case of PwC and the massive investments the company is doing for upskilling all 250,000 professional staff globally. So the show is yours, Bob.
John, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Great.
Fantastic. Thank you, and good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody, depending on which time zone you're in. I want to go back and pick up on two themes that Isabel mentioned. First, this is a challenge for the entire ecosystem. Governments, business, educators, community leaders need to be part of the process. At PwC, we truly believe that. And as PricewaterhouseCoopers, we had an opportunity not only to role model what needed to be done for our own employees, we had to help our clients, the governments in which we interact, and actually be part of the world challenge and opportunity that rests before us. About 3 years ago, we came to the conclusion that we had to upskill all of our people, not pockets of our people or centers of excellence of our people, but all of our people. Our thinking clearly evolved. We launched a program called New World, New Skills, and we committed a $3 billion investment to upskill our people, to help consult and advise our clientele and the governments we'll work with, and then contribute to society in this regard, leveraging the lessons learned from what we went through with our own experiences. As Isabel had said and was mentioned by the previous other speakers, the concept was to change the mindset of our people to a lifetime of learning, continuous learning, and benefit that would come to them. Jan, your one question to Isabel, what do we need to do to make sure people want to be motivated to do this? You have to make sure that it is treated as a benefit, almost like healthcare, for our people to take advantage of. And then you need to incent them to lean in to the opportunities that they have before them. So this way they have the opportunity not for job security, but rather job opportunity, because the job will change. What we want them to be equipped with is the right skills for the future work, whatever job that may be. With that in mind, we started off focusing on digital skills, but it evolved. It focuses now on 3 particular opportunities. First is the digital skills, the technology skills needed to create the bots and the apps, to change the workflow and work processes, and to develop the innovation that should make their work and life easier, but also benefit the individual corporate and our stakeholders at large. But it evolved. Our skilling that it had to go to, how do you adopt technologies that exist to help enable your work? Maybe not create them, but adopt them. And the third leg of the stool, which was a very important learning, was how do we teach leaders to lead in this environment? Because this cannot be done without middle management and senior management understanding the what, why, and how. The entire program had a number of different lessons learned throughout. First was the point around capacity. To share a small story, I brought our leaders together 2 years ago, talking about our overall strategy and our digitization effort, New World, New Skills being part of it. What my leaders did not know is I had some less tenured staff in the audience listening. And at the end of the conference, I brought them up on stage to get their reactions from what they've heard over the last day and a half. They love the concept of upskilling and reskilling. But their response was, who's going to do it because I don't have time? I still have to do my day job. Lesson number 1, senior management, middle management has to find the capacity of time and investment at the business level to be willing to do this. Otherwise, there'll be a passive resistance for people wanting to lean in terms of the choices that they have to make. Second point, from a lessons learned perspective, was middle management themselves have to learn, going back to those three themes of them themselves creating and innovating, adopting, or leading. If leaders in middle management and senior management are not adopting the changes that the new skills are giving and recognizing the benefits from those skills, it's actually a double negative. It's a double negative because it's disruption for the people that just learned. It's negated all the positivity that comes from that. Second, it actually negates the innovation, the effectiveness and efficiency that is gained as well in terms of the opportunities for the individual, for the teams, for the brand of the organization, for the bottom line, and for that matter, its ability to reinvest. What was very interesting in this process was we used the term citizen-led. We enforced a concept of we will provide the opportunity to learn if you lean in. If you lean in, you will not be left behind. But the expectation once you lean in is you use these new skill sets for purpose, for innovation. And yes, we'd like the innovation to create change in scale. It's a large-scale change program. What was surprising to us was once we got middle management and senior management bought in, once you found the time and once you developed the content and the quality of content that was referred to earlier, people definitely leaned in. Some needed to be motivated. Some were automatically interested. It's up to the leadership teams to figure out how to get to those motivations with either heart, mind, or soul. What was most interesting to us is we assumed a 3-year payback. A changing brand, a better workforce, a more confident workforce in their own skills and capabilities such that they were not so worried about the uncertainties of job displacement because of technology, for example, one of the topics that was talked about previously. What we found was the ROI was less than 18 months. It was almost 100% faster than we thought it was going to be. Because what happened with people having new skill sets was the innovation, the creativity, the entrepreneurship came, impacted, and was scalable. Another lesson learned is to tailor this country to country, because you have to look at the education system, the rules, requirements, and what government does locally, and what's going to personally motivate individuals and how equipped are their leadership teams to move forward. Clearly, we're focused on this from an EU perspective. It's a bigger challenge in South America, where technology, for example, is so expensive. People rely on people doing the same thing in scale, rather than the education system changing the way we work and leveraging technology in a new and different way. So how this was done in Brazil versus how this was done in Switzerland versus how this is done in China or the US has to be tailored and packaged accordingly from a motivational perspective. Now, let me go to 2 other points very quickly, Jan. One is the world.
Can you end that in 1 minute before we have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
One is the advice to the world. As we took this external, we associated with ourselves because we, PwC, couldn't do it all. We associated with many organizations worldwide, one of them being UNICEF and an organization called GenU. Why did we focus on that one? It was because GenU is focused on the youth of the world from age, call it 10 to 24, a particular class that needs more skills than that lifetime of learning. But the other thing that's important to focus on is skilling deals with the supply side. Governments and business has to also deal with the demand side, because in fact, if we skill everybody up, but there's no job opportunity, we have more social unrest. Entrepreneurship and skilling have to go hand in hand. So GenU is an organization that's focused on how do I connect to people around the world? How do I provide quality content of the education? How do I incent entrepreneurship and the scaling of that innovation? And then how do I enhance youth empowerment? Clearly, when we look at the demographics, we have to look at all age groups, not just youth, as we think about this challenge going forward. So it's important, in summary, Jan, to focus on how business role models itself, but also how business contributes to society at large. And that's why we thought the 3 pillars of what we do for our people, what we do with our clients and governments, and what we do for society at large was the right combination of things to do going forward.
Thank you, Bob, for what you shared with us so generously. Really impressive, really interesting. But I would like to go on and ask you, and I know PwC, we know PwC is very good at doing strategic partnership in this ecosystem. And so what would you say is the most important thing for people around the globe, listen to this, to grasp the idea of the ecosystem and to grasp idea about how to make it to fly with all this incentive you mentioned?
Yeah, it's a great question. Lessons learned for PwC, but also lessons learned coming out like an organization like GenU. All of us have massive aspirations. What we need is programs to be effective and efficient and have end results, the sustained outcome that we're looking for, and then build upon them and replicate them as quickly as possible rather than recreate the wheel. As was described earlier, we see too many organizations and governments doing their own little things. And it's fragmenting the system and missing the opportunity for scale. If we can actually build upon one another and leverage and scale one another, it'll solve 80% of the problem, maybe with still remaining 10% or 20% to be tailored. But there's enough content and successful programs that scalability rather than recreating the wheel is a very important lesson learned.
Thank you very much, Bob, for being with us. It was a wonderful presentation, and we really wish you all the best for moving on with the huge undertake you have in the firm for the future. Thank you very much. So we are now moving on to the next session, and that is about human resource management in the post-COVID workplace, you can say. And we are starting with a presentation providing empirical evidence on the changing job markets for talents, drawing conclusions for the next generation and in HR. So we have with us Philip Kolu, partner and associate director at BCG, Boston Consulting Group in Germany, and he will share a presentation which builds on the results from a large-scale executive surveys on future of jobs in the area of AI, artificial intelligence. So Philip, please go ahead with us. The floor is yours.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jan, for the nice introduction. It's a pleasure to open this session on HR management in the post-COVID workplace, and I would love to start with a quick look on the changing job market and how the preferences of talents are shifting and what this in turn means for next generation HR. And I think these shifts are in a way dramatic, and I strongly believe that many companies, governments and talents or individuals do not have yet a proper idea what change they will face in the coming decade. And now I just need to move the slides. Okay, good. So during the COVID-19 crisis, we just experienced how an exponential development looks like and what it means for the speed of change. We have seen how fast the way of working needed to change and how fast this was possible in the end. In many areas where a few months earlier, many would have said, that is not possible at all. The digitalization of our world and business models equally run in an exponential development. The impact of this curve that gets steeper and steeper heavily impacts many of the successful industries, whether it's insurance or automotive or any other. Both forces changes the skills we need to fuel our economies and how talents look on their employer of choice. HR is in the center of these changes. So we recently did a strategic workforce planning exercise for 3 countries, one of them Germany, a good example for how the challenge may look like in the entire European Union. We modeled the supply of current employees, migration patterns, graduates entering the job market, and the many employees retiring from it. And on the other hand, we modeled the impact of 17 different technologies, ranging from robot process automation to advanced AI. And given how they affect the tasks of different jobs, they either automate jobs, augment them, or also add additional jobs to implement. And sharing these few figures here should give you a kind of a glimpse of what it means in terms of the challenge. Yeah? They are now only numbers for Germany, but bringing all that together, we may end up with a net gap of 2.5 million FTE in 2030. That means the supply of people, of workers, will significantly decline in the coming years. Migration and new graduates don't make up what we will see in the retirement waves. Given all the economic recovery scenarios we see for after COVID, we think we need at least a stable number of employees in the coming years. And that basically ends up in a net gap of these 2.5 million people. However, this number underestimates the challenge. We looked at 80 different job clusters, and naturally, what you see is that there are job clusters like in the IT area with a significant undersupply, and there are those in the production, for example, where we'll see oversupply. So the reskilling challenge is not only the net gap, but may add up to 3.5 million to be reskilled in Germany alone. So that's on the workplace side. Now, if we look on the talent side, we recently surveyed over 200,000 job seekers around the globe to better understand what basically they see in their. Another presentation is hanging here. So to better understand what they really see and wish for the future. And what we see is that 90% of talents want some sort of remote working also in the future. That's more or less tripled or 3 times the share from a pre-COVID time. And on the other hand, they see in Europe the risk of automation and the impact of their jobs less critical than in the rest of the world. Equally, the willingness to retrain is slightly lower, but at least 60% of the talents are willing to take this step. So why do I basically show you these numbers? I think the change will be so significant that the people management on the future needs to be built on 7 core elements. And that's the following ones. So we strongly believe that remote work will stay. So finding an optimal use of the remote working models, especially in a hybrid setting, will be a challenge. Finding clever ways to balance the positive aspects we experienced with those we need to avoid will be the mission of many companies. The role of physical and mental health to improve the track employees' health and well-being, to promote efficiency and sustainability on a continuous basis will remain an ongoing duty. To really have a flexible and high-performing workforce that requires to really further develop flexible employment options applicable for the wide range of employee groups, not necessarily only the white collar people, and adapting performance management covering for those new settings. It requires a new talent and skill paradigm. So remote working become more normal. Talent pools one can access are increased. It's not limited anymore to a kind of a 20-kilometer radius around your headquarters, but basically the entire globe. To manage those talent pools in really retaining, engaging, onboarding, further skilling these people really requires new approaches. We think that just technically leading is not enough anymore. You really need to engage with your people to understand what drives them and how you can support them in their development journey. And for that, you basically need beyond your head, your heart, and your hands. And finally, a purpose-driven organization culture. The more an organization gets remote, the more important it is a joint purpose to inspire your employees and gather them behind a joint vision. So we all made these different experiences, and we strongly believe that focusing on these elements really should be the core of a people management. Let me close with a brief reflection on my 2 daughters with 8 months and 5 years. They learn every day because they are curious. They learn not because somebody tells them to learn. It's just the natural development to learn from every step they take. And I think we all need to take up a comparable state of mind to constantly learn, upskill, reskill, to be better prepared for the future. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Philip, for sharing with us. Really great and insightful. So Let us now welcome Ariane Reinhardt. She is member of the executive board and responsible for HR at Continental, one of the largest global automotive industry suppliers. Her speech will today focus on transformation with perspectives for all. This is a very practical case, and it's a description of how Continental has reached and how they responded to the Skills for Industry challenges. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan. So hello from my home office here in the north of Germany. I'm Ariane, and I'm representing 230,000 people worldwide and working at Continental, and very happy we are celebrating our 150th birthday this year. You know, we are a very old lady, but we always say it's like a startup to work with us. So let us talk about transformation, which is, of course, in our DNA. And as my colleagues talked about, you know, the challenges, in particular, also our, you know, educated workforce is, you know, facing, I wanted to get you to the base of industry. And in the base of industry, we talk about, particularly also about semi and unskilled people. So we should never forget, if we talk about transformation of labor markets, that, you know, the majority of our people in our countries are not the super high skilled academics, the software experts. They are people working in our plants, you know, working day by day with their hands. And it's good like it is, because they really, these jobs really secure social peace in Europe. And they are our base of our industry, and they are our base of our, so to say, well-being, if you want to say it like this. Next slide, please. So if you look where we are coming from in the last 150 years, you can imagine that, you know, transformation is part of our DNA. And we started with hoof buffers 150 years ago, which the horses used for carriages in the cities to avoid noises. You know, it was already a kind of, you know, a sustainable product. And today we are one of the biggest suppliers in industry for automotive components, but also for tires and industry rubbers. So we really know what transformation means. But this transformation we are facing now out of regulation is an end of the whole question of the digitalization, the whole question of, you know, technological change is something which we never faced in this kind of, you know, huge challenge in the last 150 years. So what are we doing not to leave people behind? So next slide, please. We together with our social partners, the works councils and the social partners, the trade unions, in 2018, we implemented the Continental Institute of Transformation and Technology. So in particular, answering, you know, the needs of our 10,000 unskilled and semi-skilled people, which we have in Germany. So people who never went to have a vocational training or study, or maybe if they went, it's 20, 30 years ago. So today we are qualifying these people. We have 1,000 people in the program already. You know, 700 of them already did certificates, and we see that in the future they will have a perspective, which is really important, because we know in transformation scenarios, in particular, people with less education might be the victims. We also offer qualification for qualified people. We know, in particular in Germany, one vocational training is not enough. You need to have 2 or 3. The upskilling question, look at, for instance, if you look at payroll, we don't need to have the classical payroll people. We need data analysts. We're also qualifying for these needs. We do our strategic workforce planning all over the world since 5 years. So we have a good plan and see what we are going to need. And also for the academics, you know, we are training them. And for instance, if you are coming from combustion engine, you know, you can become an electrician specialist, or we even have our own software academy where we are training our people in artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, embedded software, and so on and so forth. So qualification on all levels, this is key, because only qualification gives you employability in the future. And employability means jobs and means social peace, as I said at the beginning. So next slide, please. So what are we doing is really we are qualifying for basic competences, digital competences for everybody in the shop floor, up to the top management, like I said before. We are going to plan to have up to 2,000 unskilled and semi-skilled people in our own institute to learn a real formal qualification. And as you can see, over 600 already did their first certificates and very successfully with the highest marks. And it was a great success even in Corona times. So there is a huge shift also regarding, the idea of how to qualify, how to train. And then they can really move up the ladder, because we know that only qualification training, gives you the chance to move up the social ladder, which is really important for the people, because what we really have to avoid is that people are getting unemployed. So everything what we are doing is bring people from work into work. Is it within the company or is it external? And I think this is something where we really need a kind of joining forces within all our societies within Europe. And that's why it's also this idea of the Continental Institute for Technology Transformation. We're going to export a next step to France, and even also in the US, we're going to try it out, because I think all, in particular Western industrialized country facing the same challenges. And now with the sustainability revolution in front of us, with the regulation coming out of the Green Deals and in the national regulations, I think we will have to see that we are really going to transform our business again. So also that Continental can become not only 150 years old, but also 300 years old. Last slide, please. So this is something which we only can do together. So sustainable race is on. So what I would expect from politicians, if it's in Europe, in Brussels or in Germany, in Berlin, is that if you do regulation, always think about what impact this has on employment, what impact this has on jobs. Because what we really have to avoid is unemployment. Even if there is a transformation, we're going to master them together. We can do transformation, but we cannot handle breaks, if you really cut, so to say, one technology to the other, and the next day we really need a kind of, joining forces on this matter. Never forget the people in the shop floor, the people who are working in the plants day by day. They really also need a chance. We have a responsibility for them, and together we provide them a future. And upskilling Europe, upskilling our people, give them a chance to move up the social ladder and contribute to social peace and social rest in Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ariane. Very interesting and very important. We will come back into the discussion. Our next presentation and speaker will be given by Mark Gomez. Mark has recently joined the Adecco Group to lead the development of the upskilling and reskilling capabilities of Adecco globally. So Mark, will you now please share with us your insightful thoughts for us for the future? So welcome, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan, and thank you to Ariane and Philippe who have prepared the floor to me. For me, definitely I'd like to share some comments from our industry perspective. First, no one can argue that the world is changing very fast, and therefore our customers are asking for talents immediately, and that's a big challenge to match the demand and supply. It's a crucial challenge for us, and the only way of getting the right talent when we're talking about scarce jobs is to predict what will be the needs of our customer even before they really have the needs expressed to us. And artificial intelligence, when we combine data coming from external, being regional, local, and together with the data coming from our day-to-day operations, and thanks to the data scientists, we can make this data speak and do this prediction of the skills even before the market is demanding for these. And that's how we can, it gives us a real advantage of getting extra time to upskill, reskill the people on these skills that are on high demand. And the training is linked to the business needs. I'll give you an example. In France, we have identified 17 scarce jobs where it is very difficult to find the right talent. And it comes from truck drivers in logistics, can be technicians in constructions, it can be fiber optic technicians, even medical. Obviously, with the pandemics, a lot of demand in this area. And we had Thierry Baril speaking about the aviation challenge that they had in recent months. And for example, we had technicians in the aviation industry that we reskilled because we find that they had the right skills towards fiber optic installation technicians. That's really an example of how we have reskilled hundreds of people from an industry to another one. But what is very important also is to realize that artificial intelligence is good. Only the patterns remain the same because it looks at the past and predicts the future. So the only thing that I would like to share is it's great, but a pandemic like the one that we just have experienced is moving the game ahead of the traditional stable evolution. And it's important that we get the human eye at the end to decide on what should be the decision. But yes, proactively predicting the skills is a great advantage. The second comment I'd like to share is when we get this prediction, what do you do with that? Because as Philippe mentioned, the technology are exponentially coming, and every industry will get the technology, some sooner, some later. And then again, it's a matter of getting the people alongside this exponential growth. Do we have the right people with the right skills when the customers are asking for it? And that's where we need to create an environment where everyone can have access to the information, to the experience. I was happy to hear that 60% of people will go to learning. I think it's not enough. Everyone should have, 100% should have access to learning. And maybe we are thinking formal learning, but learning is also on the ground, on the job. It's test and learn. It's learning from day to day. It's daughters of Philippe who are learning every day. That's why we should take it on a more wider scope than only the formal learning. At ADECO, we believe that the on-the-job learning is key, that definitely. And that was very well mentioned in the introduction. It's a hand-to-hand process. We do an X-ray of the people. We get to know what are the skills they have. We don't need to reskill what they have already, what they are missing. We go to the training, being formal, virtual, or on the job. And then we do the follow-up, because we all know that if we are skilled in a specific competence and we don't apply it, we know that it's useless. So the downstream part of the process is very key. Today, we are skilling on technical, but a lot of our customers are also asking for the right behavior, the soft skills. If you have someone delivering your parcel to your home, the last mile, as we say, the customers, they want the people to be able to drive the trucks, but they also want the people to be having the right behavior, which is the one that they want the drivers to have. And last but not least is learning continuously. Today, it's like when you have your smartphone or computer asking for an upload. You press yes and you get the last version. What about pressing yes to your brain software? You need to upload that. Our grandparents, they could last for an entire career upon the skills they had at school. Our parents, maybe 5, 10, 15 years. Now, depending on the area, of course, it can be a few months to few years max. That's a given that we need to upload the brain software. And that's something I'll hand up also with an anecdote. 5 years ago, I had a good friend who's a business school professor who was curating some data articles, mailing that to me. And one day he said, "What do you think about the article I sent yesterday?" I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have time." And he told me, "Are you too busy to learn?" I said, "No, of course, but I was very busy." He said, "But you're always telling me that." I said, "Yeah, sure." And I reflect on myself and I say, am I really too busy to learn? No, of course not. So it made me a spark in my head, and now I'm taking it very seriously. I'm not saying that I'm spending every day on reading articles or accessing any information that gives me extra information, but ask yourself, are you too busy to learn? In conclusion, I would like to wrap up getting the 3 messages. AI, very good. It's a great enabler. It gives us and should give every industry a way to predict, but make sure that you have clean data and that you get the human touch. Secondly, technology is exponential, yes, but it's people will be the differentiator. And the last one is the one I just mentioned, is ask yourself if you are too busy to learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Very great insights, I would say. I like this comment about when you're reflecting here on, so honestly, are we too busy to learn? And we said in the beginning here that skills is the power of discernment. So we maybe have to discern. Are we too busy to learn? All of us. So thank you for putting that thing in context for us. Let's go deeper now and discuss some more linked to the three last speakers. And I will start now to ask some questions, and I will start with Ariane Reinhardt. So as learning is so important to successfully overcome technological transformation, how do we make sure that everyone is on board and focuses on its own learning? What do you say, Ariane, to this?
I think, let's go back to our people in the plants, the blue collar workers. So if you have people who didn't learn for, 10, 20, 30 years, the first thing you have to ensure is that they relearn to learn, so to say. And this means that they need to have success, that they need to have a perspective. You have to have small learning bites in the process, learning on the job, not externally. And this is something with the first kind of also thing you have to do, because sometimes they're even afraid to learn again. This is one point. The other point is that we really have to think in the future how a working day looks like. Is it, it's not only about being productive, it's about communication, it's about learning how this is woven in and what does it mean also for us, which value has which part. I think this is something we need to discuss. And in particular, when you work in a shift, in a shift model, where do you have the spare room to learn? And is learning always only the responsibility of the company to provide learning, or is it also my own responsibility? Do I have to take ownership, for my career and learning? This is one part. I think, for the indirect workers, the white collars and so on, it's much easier because now we have a learning management system at Continental, for instance, and only in the first months of this year, we provided more than 400,000 learning points all around the globe because people are eager to learn, and they used also the Corona pandemic and the remote working to learn even more. I think that we are in going in the direction of a learning organization. But I'm very much concerned about our colleagues in the shop floor, and there we have to take special care to put them, on this journey of learning, and to that they also see what is my benefit on the return, of investment for this learning journey. And I think this is a joint responsibility and also a joint necessity, because if we forget to upskill our people, on the industrial base, we, as an industry continent, we will have a problem.
Thank you. And one takeaway for me is when you say take away the fear from people, so that really we will move on and do this thing. But I also understood from your presentation that there is a social dimension, linked to sustainability. Skills is a part of sustainability, I can hear. Could you provide us with some more insights? What could be at stake for the jobs and society in Europe when you talk about skills in a sustainability perspective?
Yes, I think at first it comes down to your product portfolio. We companies have to ask ourselves, can we reduce this or that company according to the Green Deal still, even if it's profitable and there is a lot of employment behind? And this is what I mean also how we have to discuss with the politicians, that we say, okay, if we have to stop this product and if we have to invest in innovation for a new product and new innovation, and parts, what does it mean? How can you help and support? And what does it mean for our people? What kind of competences do they need? Look, for instance, if you have a high-tech, fully automatic plant where you build components, electronic components, you don't need semi and unskilled people anymore. We have mechatronics 4.0. They really are, so to say, need to be able to steer the software part of the whole production part. And this is something where we need to look at, what does it mean for our people? And as you said, in sustainability, I'm responsible for sustainability and human relations, because the two things go hand in hand, and everything what we are doing always has an impact on our people.
Thank you, Ariane. Good to hear all those good comments. Let me ask Mark about, Adecco is historically known for its temporary staffing business. So why is your company investing in the learning space that is already very busy with thousands of pure or you can say analog players as well as a lot of digital players? Let me hear.
Yeah, indeed. I think we we owe it to the customers. I mentioned the customers are asking for people solution now. They cannot wait because their industry cannot pause their industry, and we understood from all the speakers so far that getting the skilled people on the job is a given, is a mandatory option. So we need that. We owe that to the customers, and by putting more than 3 million people at work every year, we know the market, we know the needs, the real needs, and therefore we can put the real skilling solutions in front of them. And we owe it also to the employees, to the workers, because employability, lifelong employability is what they are looking for. And therefore, it's essential that we remain best in class, not only on recruitment sourcing, but also on getting the right skills for them. And it's not only giving them access to a digital platform, it's doing the career guidance, helping them getting the right reskill, because upskilling is somehow easy, but reskilling a butcher to become a technician in fiber optic, it's not that easy. It needs coaching, it needs guidance, and also it needs follow-up, just not the last hour of the training, done, here you go. So it's how we make sure that we mentor, coach, call it however you want, but how we make it so that we ensure the person gets lifelong employability. That's from a customer perspective and from an employee perspective, why Adecco is investing massively in learning. And the last point is that we commit. Last year, our CEO committed to upskill 5 million. We said that 100 million from the McKinsey source, 100 million to be upskilled by 2030. We commit, our company commit to 5 million by 2030. So it's a serious goal.
Thank you, Mark. I understand. So let's move to Philip. And I would say from all the trends and imperatives that you share with us quite recently, what will be the biggest challenge to address when you look upon this real situation?
You know, I think the biggest challenge is the speed and the size. Yeah, I mean, with COVID, we first learned how an exponential development really feels. It's something we never really feel and touch, but there we felt what an exponential growth really means. And the same is true for any digitalization that we see, that we don't feel as much yet. And the same is true for the size of what is impacted. As Ariane said, it's not about an exclusive knowledge worker, white collar elite of people we need to retrain and reskill. It's basically everybody who is working, because it's not only whose jobs that will basically be automated and need to be retrained into a completely different job. Also, those who stay in their jobs need to upskill and need to learn new things. And that, I mean, you also brought the example from controlling to become people analytics people. They probably do the same job profile more or less, but they need to acquire completely new skills. And I think and Continental is doing a good job in understanding what the future or strategic workforce needs are. And I think this clarity is needed to really have an idea of the size of the challenge, not only in the company, but also for governments. And I think that this kind of challenge can only be also answered jointly. And so this transparency of really whom we need is key, because we are talking about people and human beings, and they need some time to learn and reskill. If we just see there is a gap and we don't have the people, it's just too late to act.
Yeah. Philip, you also shared with us before these 7 different elements about the future. If you take a minute to elaborate on what do you really sense have been the way people have received this message when you talk about these pillars, what would be your comment, and what would be the most intriguing and most important?
Look, I mean, these 7 pillars, I think that they are seen, and they are, I mean, we all made various kinds of experience along those, whether it's smart work, whether it's how we are leading or we want to be led in this kind of situations, how we treat mental and physical health, how we are evaluated against our performance. I mean, we all did these different experiences. I think we need now to translate these experiences, positive and negative, to a new era after in the post-COVID time, where we will see still some kind of challenges from this time, but also need to balance it in hybrid working models and really put the employees kind of in a way first to really think also all the HR processes or HR and people management functions, really think what they are doing out of the people's, the employees, the managers' eyes, how they can be improved and cater their needs. And in the end, also kind of offer new digital solutions for the people management that really sustain these different pillars.
Okay, thank you very much, both Ariane, Philip, and Mark, for this great contribution and presentations and discussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now it's time to move on and to discuss skills for service innovation and job creation, scenarios and recommendations for 2030. Our next session will be a type of chat with 3 experts on this topic. We'll focus on service innovation, scenarios, visions, and those recommendations for actions, and how, of course, how to get there at 2030. We are very proud to have Jim Spohr with us. Jim is Director Cognitive Open Tech at IBM in the USA, and he is the godfather of what was called service science, I would say. Today may be best defined as service innovation when it comes to skills required for the future. So then after we will listen to Tobias Hysing. He is a senior research consultant at Empirica. He will speak about the vision of where Europe should be in 2030 and elaborate on recommendations, actions to be taken in different areas for us today. And then finally, in this setting, we have Mr. Laurent Probst, partner at PwC in Luxembourg. He will speak about some keys for actions needed to reach the goals and targets, and also some promising good practices already in the making. I will also say that in the end of this session, I will introduce to you the question of a poll in which we all like to get involved and participate, who are in the conference, and we can say, have a say. And that will be very interesting to see what we get out of that process. But let's get started with our theme on service innovation and job creation. Jim, I would say to you, rapidly advanced technologies are changing the nature of work and service sector jobs, and that dominates the advanced economies. And we can recall that 2 decades ago, you strongly advocated for service science and what was called T-shaped skills. So what is needed from your perspective in terms of mindset and skills for a smart workforce? And who would be responsible for T-shaped upskilling of the workforce of the future? So please welcome and please go live, Jim.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity, and welcome. I'm Jim Spohr. I'm here at the IBM Research Almaden Center in Silicon Valley, California. The sun is just coming up here in California, so it's a great pleasure to have this opportunity to talk to you about service innovation, as well as the needed skills and who's responsible for those. And just briefly, what I would like to start with, though, is the idea that, you know, we've heard about this skills gap. We've heard about there's all these future jobs that are fantastic and employers are trying to hire people. And yet there's all of these people who have to be upskilled or reskilled to help shrink that gap. And let's explore that just a little bit before getting into the service innovation. Because at IBM, we did survey 5,000 business leaders, our customers and our ecosystem partners in hybrid and AI. And when we interviewed them about the skills gap, what we found was, not surprisingly, of course, workforce skills, technical skills, digital skills, very, very important for, closing this gap. But the most in-demand skill, what was number one in these 5,000 business leaders, was adaptability. And this is about openness, flexibility, agility. And that adaptability is something that was most in demand. And previous speakers talked about this as lifelong learning as well. We know that T-shaped professionals, those who have depth and breadth of knowledge, are more adaptable. We also know that children who get pre-K education have a lifetime of more adaptability. And so it's not surprising that the Biden education plan, for example, has included in it expanded pre-K education. But once you think about somebody joining the labor force, out of high school, what we also know about adaptability is that, especially for underrepresented groups, minorities and other disadvantaged groups, it's important to make sure that they have a bridge. So at IBM, we've pioneered this PTech program to help bridge more diverse students into the workforce. Now, if we turn to service offerings today and service innovation, I would challenge anybody to identify a service offering that isn't being improved in productivity and quality through data and AI. We're seeing it everywhere. And as we think about these gains in productivity, there are going to be enormous gains in productivity and in service innovation over the coming years, thanks to AI and other technologies. And we've seen the pandemic accelerating that. Clearly, the pandemic has accelerated online. Clearly, the pandemic has accelerated the adoption of AI technology. And here in Silicon Valley, just to take a very, very concrete, practical example of who's responsible and how this responsibility gap for closing that, certainly the individual has a lot of responsibility. But what we're also seeing, I can't turn on the radio or listen to the news without hearing an advertisement for a delivery driver. Here in Silicon Valley, we see delivery trucks everywhere as a result of the pandemic. And think about the quality improvement. Just a few years ago, you'd order something, 3 days later, it might get there. Today, it's like, boom, sometimes it's there the day you ordered it. So quality is improved. And there's this incredible demand for drivers. But also, in these advertisements, the employers are so eager. They're offering sign-on bonuses over the radio. They're offering upskilling opportunities. They're describing these digital jobs, the AI jobs, the data science jobs, and saying, start with us, we'll provide these benefits for you. I think we've heard in the previous speakers, certainly at IBM we have programs, but all of the IT companies out here, Salesforce has a Trailblazer program that I've heard of where, hairdressers and construction workers can be upskilled. So I'm certainly seeing a lot of employer programs here in Silicon Valley, a lot of incentives. And I think this is part of the solution. We've heard about the Biden education program, get that adaptability and get the students into pre-K, expand, lifelong learning has to be extended both earlier to have the pre-K and the adaptability and those social emotional skills. It has to go a little longer than high school. There's a quite popular or famous book out here in the US now called Deaths of Despair. And if you don't get that associate degree, if you don't get that college degree, it can set you back in life and it can have really major consequences. So if people are interested in that, read that Deaths of Despair and really see how important it is that we extend lifelong learning and formal learning around lifelong learning a little bit earlier and a little bit later. And then we just have to really be prepared for this amazing productivity and quality increases that are going to be coming from AI. And all of those improvements are coming from this, hybrid cloud AI ecosystem, and there's just going to be a huge demand for jobs in this area. I'll just close by saying, I'm here in the U.S., here in Silicon Valley at IBM Research Almaden, but recently IBM and Fraunhofer announced our work together in quantum computing, and there's another example of where new jobs are being created in this environment. So there's always going to be, for those people who are excited about the technology, who really have the passion to learn, there's always going to be these new frontiers of jobs opening. And I think what we have to do, though, is as we heard in the previous panel, we really have to start focusing more on what about the people who are being left out, and how do we make sure that the workforce is more diverse and inclusive going forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Interesting. What I take away from what you said, curiosity is very important here, but also what you said about that this type of adaptability is the key word, and to have a T which is well shaped, both have wide knowledge and deep knowledge, has the best opportunity to be accepted in the future job market and to be more adaptable. I think we will come back to this topic. Thank you. So let's move on to the next speaker, and this is Tobias. And I would say you and your team have been developed different scenarios and a vision of where Europe could be in 2030. And this will be published by the European Commission later this year. Could you now give us an overview of the recommended actions to be taken? And I will ask you, please also elaborate a little bit on level of impact of these actions, short term and long term. So please go live, Tobias. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan. Yes, can you hear me?
Go on.
Okay, great. Okay, it's an honor to have the opportunity to present our work here to such a great audience. Yes, so what we have done, we have developed 3 scenarios, and the first scenario is pretty much along the line of what if everything just turns out fine and everybody does the right things. Where could Europe then be in 2030 in terms of new services, in terms of new service jobs? Yeah, and then we contrast this on the other hand with a scenario where we look at suspected weaknesses of the different stakeholders, and then we get to a scenario where, despite all good intentions, we fail to upskill the workforce, we fail to reform the training system, etc. We fail to get efficient policies in place. So the first scenario we call the vision scenario, because that's what it is. It's our ambition for upskilling Europe by 2030, and the opposite one then is called modeling through. You see these on the slide here. They are both real, let me say, insofar as they just rely on modeling the stakeholder behavior. They are not using any external shocks or black swans or anything like that. And then between these two, these 2 poles, we have a third scenario, which is called the middle ground, which is a bit of both. Not everything goes wrong, but not everything is a success, etc. So in the limited time that we have, I guess it's best if I just focus on the vision scenario. So first of all, it should be completely in line with the ambitions that we've heard in the beginning, such as the digital decade goals. So in it, continuous upskilling will be established as a default mode of everybody's life. Let's say new smart services are the key driver of innovation, and these services need, of course, new skills, which is the core production factor of these T-shaped skills. Yes. So new skills does not just mean new curricula or new learning outcomes or anything like that, but it also means the way of how we provide education and training. It means tools, it means on-the-spot learning, and this changes rapidly. So in the vision, there's consensus between stakeholders that this will change and that it's fast, it's adaptive, it's demand-driven, demand-based. It's not imposed on workers, but ultimately it's selected by empowered learners who make mindful decisions about their individual learning pathways and investments. And that's all based on the best possible information and analysis. So this is a scenario. And then looking at what needs to be done, we developed these recommendations for actions. There are 4 broad domains of action that we propose: political leverage, which is about setting the agenda, strategy alignment across geographies, better regulation of upskilling. Then we have the demand side, that's the demand side of training, which comprises learners and employers, and the measures here are about generally the breadth and depth and quality of training uptake. We have the supply side, which means the education and training system, and recommendations here are how to improve this. And then finally matching, which is all about skills allocation. So about removing all kinds of friction that may stand in the way of bringing together job and skill. So I just want to select one recommendation in each of the these fields here. A small disclaimer, it's still preliminary. We are in the process of reconciling about the recommendation with several experts, also our steering committee. So anyway, in political leverage, the challenge is really for policy to hit the ground running, given the urgency of the topic and also the resources available all of a sudden. So there's some danger to stay with just the known and established and just do more of the same, which is not to say there aren't measures that deserve more of the same, but it will certainly not suffice. So there's the need for rapid capacity building. And so one of the measures we propose is here to very quickly put together a policy toolbox which collects tried and tested or emerging and promising measures adapted to region and specific situation, etc. And on the demand side, the challenges include, well, we've heard that participation in training is low and it's especially uneven across different population groups and especially for SMEs. So we stress that subsidizing the demand side is really the primary vehicle for financing upskills because it will be a bottom-up management of the issue, trusting that learners and employers know best what's needed better than any top-down planning ever could. So anyway, do learners immediately know what is needed? No, not necessarily. And that is one of our recommendations here, which is about service innovation roadmaps, which in our context are really individual upskilling roadmaps. And the idea is that if we're serious about upskilling, invest a whole lot of money, it has to follow a plan. It must be made wisely, must be made mindfully by those affected and those who have the best information at hand. Much of it can be algorithm-based and should be, but it also needs to go hand in hand with personal individual coaching and mentoring. So there's been this great piece in the New York Times recently about how coaching and mentoring in the US have made a huge difference. And this is really a learning in the success of upskilling because it closes what they call the last mile gap. It makes the difference between completing or dropping off from an online course, for instance, or between finding just a job and finding a perfect match. On the supply side, we talk about helping providers offer better courses and educational resources. So the challenge here include scaling. Well, apart from that, short half-lives of usefulness, of course, the need for individual just-in-time solutions, which may be sector-specific or even company-specific. So exemplary recommendation here is the development of just enough, just-in-time, just-for-me resources. The reason is pretty obvious. It smoothly integrates learning into the workflow, taking into account people's reduced attention span, etc. So what it should try to achieve is to support situational learning through workplace-specific programs, personalized algorithms that can draw on individual skills profiles on previous learning, situational awareness analysis, can help speeding up finding the right contents in an instance, and so on. So it's also, of course, about learning which is then immediately applied in a practical setting, which is very important for the success of learning. I'm seeing I'm running out of time already. So our fourth one is matching. As I said, it's about removing frictions. And our recommendation here is about the common language for the labor market, which is about skills ontologies. So we found it amazing in our workshops that what seems like a very dry topic, such as ontologies, was met with enthusiastic response. It seems to be a real bottleneck everywhere in many areas: education, hiring, contracting, labor market research. And we've got ESCO. It's come a long way. We recommend keeping on developing this. We recommend taking the example of the e-competence framework, which was really a good development process. We now have the data. We have skills of 8. We have artificial intelligence. So there's a lot that can be done there. So to just give you an overview in the limited time, these are our 17 or so recommendations. We've placed them on this plot here to see which of them are radically new, which of them are more an increasement of what has already been done, and which of these have a rather quick impact, and which of these have a rather long-term impact. I'd like to dwell on this, but I see I'm running out of time, so I think I will stop here. This is in a nutshell our recent work of 1.5 years or so. It's always a challenge to bring this in this short amount of time. We'll be very happy to get to know any comments you might have on this. Please contact us via the functional email, which also was used for the invitations here. So if you would like to leave a general comment or suggestion, that's very welcome. I thank you very much for your attention.
Okay.
Back to Jan.
Thank you very much, Tobias, and we will come back soon and discuss how we can make use of these different files, and we'll get them downloaded and comment. So now we transition to Laurent and Laurent Probst. So with all your experience regarding innovation, ecosystems, job creation, and skills, what needs to be done to accelerate success of upskilling and reskilling programs, as companies will suffer from lack of skills? I mean, governments see increasing number of available jobs, but also increasing, I would say, unemployment, because there is this kind of skills gaps. So, Laurent, please go live and tell us some really interesting stories and facts. Unmute.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you, Jan, for this introduction. My perspective is that we have to consider skills as the new currency. With skills now you can trade a career, you can trade a new job, you can trade a new salary. And my first recommendation is that for currency, we have a central bank leader. Okay, we have someone accountable for. So my first point in terms of recommendations is for governments and corporates to appoint a minister of skills or a chief skills officer in order to make people accountable for developing and managing the skills portfolio. I think this is a very important starting point. The second recommendation from a very pragmatic perspective is to work on the upskilling ecosystem at a regional level or at a sectorial level to ensure an enabling regional ecosystem. The readiness of the ecosystem is a prerequisite for upskilling success, meaning if the demand and supplies were not properly analyzed, if business associations are not on board, if sectorial or regional vocational trainings have not been audited in line with new demand, the upskilling programs will not work. So making sure that the different stakeholders of the ecosystems are on board and aligned is a key prerequisite for success. The third point is about activating sectorial upskilling analysis with a better and deeper understanding of the current and future demand and supply, as has been said, the taxonomy, a common taxonomy, and then also the development of new sectorial training solutions in line with the demand. Too many too many vocational trainings are today totally outdated. So we need to review that and making sure that the training solutions are totally compatible with the SMEs requirement, because the big problem today is for SMEs. A lot of new upskilling programs are not compatible with SMEs requirement. So this is a key point. Then another point is to launch upskilling program along the supply chain. As Airbus said, it's with their suppliers, with their clients, in order to support a full supply chain. Because there, some big corporates could take the initiatives, take their suppliers and clients, and go to governments to initiate some upskilling programs. And then the last point, which is certainly one of the most important ones, is to make sure that the upskilling must be defined and tailored for a person, for a job. It could not be generalized. It has to be individualized. And this is a key point to motivate the person and to increase the return on investment, the business case. So I think these 5 points are really important, and what we have seen really on the ground with concrete upskilling projects. And I would like to mention one, to my knowledge, one very good ahead upskilling program, which is currently taking place in Singapore. It's a large-scale multi-corporate upskilling initiative, and this is about the upskilling of the Singapore financial sectors. And this is a long-term project. It's a massive project involving more than 100 banks, involving more than 50,000 employees from now, focused on technologies, but focused also on a very strong personal assistance of employees. These are the points that I would like to mention, but think about skills as a new currency.
Thank you very much for this important word, which is for hands-on and concrete examples of what we have to do. So I would like to thank Lauren Probst from PwC, Jim Spohr from IBM, and Tobias Hysing from Empirica for a very good and energizing contribution. And I think we will be very eager to download a lot of these presentations as soon as possible. Let me also briefly say, after this event, you and all the around 800 participants of this event who asked for interest can download the slides which have been and will be presented today and tomorrow, all the documents and all on different things, sections on the Skills4Industry website. You are encouraged to send general comments and suggestions relating to the scenarios and recommendations and actions and so on and so forth before the end of July. That's the latest. And these will then be taken into consideration into the finalization of reports and recommendations and so on. The plan is also to further develop the report, considering all the expert inputs, and finish it by the 31st of August 21, and to make it public available in September 2021. So again, have your say. Make a comment, send us your contributions, your thoughts and ideas for what needs to be commented on or put into this great important process. Okay, now it's time for you to have a say, not by email, but have your say right now. So let's start a poll. The access details to allow you to participate can be seen in the stream below, and you can also find them in the chat. The poll is open from now, and we will ask you 2 very straightforward, very simple questions. And it's the Mentimeter poll, and the numbers, the codes for you to put in here is 5009 1052. I say it again if you haven't found a pen. So the code is 5009 1052. And the questions are, what is most important for reaching the ambitious up and reskilling targets in the vision for 2030? How should up and reskilling measure, and second, and how should up and reskilling measures be targeted to maximize their effort, so their effect on the labor force? So the poll will stay open for 30 minutes, so no hurry. Take your time to vote and complete it. So you need maybe some coaching to complete, not to just leave. Now, complete it and stay on board and enjoy the next speakers. We'll be later today presenting what's the outcome of this poll in the conference here before we close today. And I'm really looking forward to what do you think and what do you as a collective body being a part of this conference, what do you think about this? So, having said that, it's now time for the next theme. And it's amazing how many interesting and important themes we have to deal with. So I can think about how much work it has been for all these people leading this process up to now. It's very impressive, and I think we are all very thankful, because we sense a certain focus, and we sense a vision, and we sense practical hands-on activities which will reshape the competitiveness and increase the competitiveness of Europe and getting better skilled. So that's wonderful. But the next theme is matching demand and supply for the creation of better jobs and a highly skilled workforce. That is what we're going to discuss. And that is the last session today. And it will be kind of an expert panel. So experts from European countries and from US who will express their views honestly, and they will discuss recommendations and actions for upskilling Europe. And as we know, this is urgently needed for increasing the talent pool, matching demand and supply, and create a fully functioning upskilling ecosystem. We've heard that word often, ecosystem. I think that's very important to underline. The ecosystem in Europe at all levels, local, regional, central, specifically at regional level, where it creates strongest impact. Someone said that's the level that the music is played. So we are now very happy to have on board 5 very distinguished experts to deal with this very, I would say, complex question. So let me present to you the experts. It's Theos Efgenou, professor at INSEAD, INSEAD Business School and academic director of eLab in France. Our second expert is Mary Cleary, Secretary General of the Irish Computer Society and the Irish Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition. And number 3, Walter Ganz, Head of Institute of Fraunhofer IOA in Germany. And Bianca Dragomir, CEO of the Cleantech Cluster Valencia region in Spain. And finally, Erwin Wladawski-Barger, research affiliate at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, called as MIT in USA. So, with 5 key people on board on the screen for you already, let us start with Theos. So Theos, the business school's mission is professional training. And the current technology trends largely is around data analytics and AI. And this is causing a lot of disruption in the economy, in all industries, in all sectors, in all the in-between spaces of sectors and industries. So my question is, how can we best prepare Europe's future managers to support our businesses in leveraging these technologies? And what skills will be needed, and how are business schools adapting into this completely new disruptive situation? Please go on.
Thank you very much. And first of all, just to say it's a pleasure to be here and talk about this very important topic. Skills always comes on top of the list when it comes to enablers or constraints in terms of innovation, in terms of adoption of new technologies, and eventually, of course, productivity and competitiveness. Just to give you an example, we did a study a few months back at INSEAD with the board and Mazars, based on a survey of about 120 directors of boards, CEOs, and CFOs of global organizations about what are the main constraints for adoption of artificial intelligence and digital technologies. And by far, the number 1 factor is lack of understanding of what these technologies do and are for the organization, and what one can do with them, and skills, availability of skills across the organization. It was like probably something almost twice as often cited reason, the skills, than the second most cited one, which is the usual suspects like managing organizational change when you adopt technologies or IT challenges or data challenges. So it's a big, big topic, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'll use the space of data and AI, as you pointed out, thank you for the question, to just give some examples of challenges in upskilling and training managers and executives as we see it from the side of INSEAD, and make 3 points. First of all, a point around the type of skills necessary, as you asked. This is based on a study we did based on interviews of about 30 plus heads of data leaders chief data officers, heads of analytics, and also some CEOs and CFOs around exactly this question: what skills does the leadership team and the management team need to adopt these technologies and leverage technologies? And the number one and most important point to make is the importance of a breadth of skills, which is typically people think about technical skills or maybe only business skills, but no, you need to basically have a combination of, let's say, 3 types of skills at the high level: soft skills, a lot around communication, how to communicate with data and convince people, and kind of influence, the skills of influencing based on information and analytics. Then there's business skills, financial skills, and making the business case. And then, of course, there are technical skills to be able to make decisions. So interesting, the soft and business skills and communication skills are coming always as number one. But it's important to notice everybody is talking about the breadth of skills. Second point to make is around the kind of knowledge we provide at the business school, and as we see like a key trend in these days, which is, of course, also very broad knowledge. It's the first time, so when it comes to this kind of adoption of technologies and change of organizations and industries, of course, we cover all the topics around industry transformation, around project management for technology projects, around technology, around organizational change. But for example, new topics are coming every year, if you wish, and the latest one being around responsible use of technologies, ethics of technologies, AI risks, and how to think about the use and adoption of the technologies responsibly. So again, a breadth of topics with new coming in. Finally, a point around the channels of delivery. One of the trends we see is the development of new specialized masters, but also certificate programs, online or hybrid. And again, one of the biggest, fastest growing master's programs, degrees programs in these days is again around analytics and analytics, with like almost like a 30+% year-on-year growth in demand. So this, and plus the COVID, of course, experience, just to close with that a little bit, has taught us a lot of new ways of delivery, which are hybrid, which are ways of involving, for example, alumni and creating more porous collaborations and interactions between academia and industry. So we did, for example, an experiment in quotes this year. I just finished this course myself a few weeks back, where we connected through Zoom, of course, through online media, of course, inside alumni who graduated like 10, 15 years ago, brought them in the class and created teams between them and the current participants that they worked on projects and got to exchange and share experiences. So in a sense, this creates kind of a very fluid environment of learning, connecting alumni, industry experts from what's happening today in the economy, and of course, academic work. So again, breadth of knowledge, breadth of skills, new channels, new programs, certificates, and this porous, continuous kind of networking across different stakeholders as we move forward. Looking forward to discussing further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great to hear, Theos. So let's move on to Mary. And you have heard several views on actions to be taken for the creation of better jobs and a highly skilled workforce in Europe. So what would be of key importance for getting a kind of a quality seal for the future to ensure quality labeled workforce with T-shaped skills profiles? The floor is yours. We can't hear you. No.
There we go. Okay, sorry. So I'm delighted to hear the emphasis on the T-shape, and the breadth of knowledge. I think it's really, really critical. So we have heard several different approaches and ideas over the course of the afternoon. And in the context of the very lofty ambitions to have 20 million IT specialists by 2030, it's very important that we do consider how these initiatives can work and how we can make sure that we not only have 20 million IT specialists, but we have the right 20 million, the skilled 20 million that are going to do what needs to be done. We know the ICT workforce is, a key enabler to the European economy and sovereignty and overall sustainability, to the success of Europe, as we've also heard said today. But still, we struggle to attract people into this profession. We struggle to attract young people, we struggle to attract women, and we struggle to attract people whom we try to attract by getting them to convert from other professions. I heard somebody say, I think it was Jim Sproor, about converting hairdressers into ICT professional roles. Very, very doable, but we have to make the profession attractive. So we've tried so many things. We've tried debunking the myths about dreary, repetitive and antisocial jobs and work experiences. That didn't work. Well, maybe it made some impact, but it hasn't worked because our problem is still there. We've tried promoting ICT to women and girls. Some of the initiatives have been quite patronizing, I have to say. Focusing on things like fashion and the artistic side of things, which is all very valid, but we all know that girls are capable of and like the technical things too. So this hasn't been totally successful. The reason why, it's that girls are people too, and they need the same incentives and attractions as other parts of society. So we haven't really succeeded with all the initiatives and the money and the effort and the projects that have been put in place to get more people to want to become IT professionals. But in my view, the problem is really more the low status that the IT profession has in the industry and in society, particularly in society. So we know that IT is a young profession and that there are multiple entry points, but there's no common standard or requirements, quality label, if you like, around the profession. Professional bodies like my own, the Irish Computer Society, are voluntary networks. And it really behoves us to create and to showcase a quality assurance scheme for our members and for all IT professionals whom we'd like to attract into being part of the community. And this quality assurance scheme is the notion of IT professionalism. So just like any other profession, be it the medical profession, the accountancy profession, we need to really make sure that IT is recognized and given the esteem that it deserves. So we can call on SEN, for example, the European Standardization Body, to establish and promote professional standards for IT, for the workforce, as well as for systems, solutions, all of the other things that are subject to standards. And we can advise and guide IT professionals on the professional practice that emanates from those standards, the way they carry out their activities, the way they do their work, the way they keep their skills up to date. It's clearly the competence and skill part is really very important. Ethical behavior is important. Caring for clients and for society is very important. And if we're going to attract young people and people coming from other spheres of life, because that's what we have to do. We have one pool of people. Yes, we can bring people in from outside, but we have one pool of people in Europe and we have to attract them into the profession to get up to that 20 million. So the key, in my view, is self-esteem, making people feel good about themselves and about their profession and holding their heads up and not sort of saying, well, oh, I work in IT, I work in information technology, rather than I am an IT professional and I hold my head up and I am proud of what I do because I recognize how important it is for the success of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Notes well taken. Thank you so much. We will move on now and listen to Walter and say, how can cutting-edge technologies complement and enhance learning formats? How should vocational and academic training be balanced to achieve a good match between skills, demand and supply in this post-COVID era? So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, good days, ladies and gentlemen. I was listening this afternoon a little bit on the panels, on the sessions, on the key speeches, and I was really surprised. There's a lot already going on European and member state level, how we should go forward to adapt the skills of the workforce to cope with a fast changing labor market, for instance, in promoting a culture of lifelong learning for all or building strong skills partnerships. But this reminds me to a discussion we have to think seriously again. When I think about the term lifelong learning, how old is it? So how long are we, I would say, facing this term, are struggling with this term, for example, particularly when we think about the execution of lifelong learning and the culture of lifelong learning. So this is my first question a little bit. But I like to consider today 3 aspects regarding to the skills of industry challenges. The first aspect I like to remind you is to reconsider the potential of the dual vocational training system. The second is promoting working environments conducive to learning. And the third is to tap the full potential of AI as a supporting learning technology. I will explain it a little bit. So first, reconsider the potential of the dual vocational training system. I guess what we need is much more an appreciation and further development of the dual vocational training system that's urgently needed. I will give a plea for, I will say, middle qualification level of people, because the majority of people are not at the high end, are not academics, for example. It's a majority of people are in the middle qualification level. And we call it, for example, in German, there's a term, we call it Facharbeit. So it's skilled worker definition, when to translate Facharbeit in English, for example. So, and I like to question, do we really need more and more academics? I think we should promote education and training in the middle skill level to the same extent. We need people with technical skills for the quality-based execution of performance promises. So that is very important because, for example, Germany is an exporting country, for example. And why are the people all around the globe buying German products or services? Because it's a high-level execution. We already observe a lack of craftsmen and qualified service workers, for instance, in the health or senior care industries. You know, particularly in these sectors, we have a reputation problem, for instance, low salaries, and a lack of appreciation. Also because of that, the German federal government has recognized that measures and activities must be bundled in the national further education strategy in order to strengthen professional further education in Germany and thus also strengthen the middle class. So, second, promoting working environments conducive to learning. It's not just about how we can learn and train to face the challenges of digitalization or the Green Deal. It's even more about designing work environments that are desirable and conducive to learning. Working and learning must be viewed together. A fundamental success factor for mastering current changes in the transformation context, in our opinion, is the strategic management of competencies, which is increasingly seen as a central field of action in the digitalization and in the transformation phase we are right now. Competences from a practical point of view are the capabilities to get things well done. As already mentioned from other colleagues, the importance of competence-based approaches in contrast to the traditional occupational approach is an important point we have to emphasize. The strategic management of competences include, for instance, the connections of competence roadmaps to the strategic development and roadmap of the strategic businesses of the companies, the designing and specifying of learning architectures and learning paths, and the measurement and evaluation of skill portfolios, etc. But we believe making further training of employees a permanent and embedded part of the daily work activities will become as well a key factor in the future. And that leads me to the third point, to tap the full potential as AI as a supporting learning technology. How can we foster workplace-related competence development approaches with benefiting from AI, for example, as a supporting learning technology? There is a lot we can use, for example. AI-based learning systems will give learning close to the workplace a boost in the future, we think. So,
Thank you very much, Walter. Great to hear, and let's try to come back to these topics. And we now move over to Bianca. You're an expert on regions and clusters. The regions are, as I said before, the level where the music is played, quote unquote. The question is now, how does the message of this conference translate into the regions? And I will also say, with your experience and expertise from running a regional cluster, what are the next steps to be taken to create the necessary, I would say, regional ecosystems and getting them in place? So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this introduction. Also for mentioning that the region is the level where music is played. I must say that this is music to my ears, because indeed the region is where change is happening on the ground, and therefore by connecting these stakeholders together within the innovation ecosystem that always is happening at the regional and the local level, regions are also spark plugs in the reskilling revolution. Now, allow me to give just a glimpse on something that I'm doing on a daily basis. This is what I'm actually living on my own skin in Valencian region, where I lead the cleantech cluster of the Valencian region, together with about 300 public and private stakeholders in the cleantech industry, gathering from business to training centers, to academia, universities, government, investors, research as well, and cities, co-leading the energy transition to make a dent in the energy transition with the Valencian region. And with the task is quite clear. Only in solar and energy and in wind, we need to accelerate 10,000 megawatts in the next 10 years. This is the regional objective, and that means only in this specific sector in the next few years the creation of 3,000 new green jobs directly and 30,000 indirect jobs indirectly. Now, I've been a CEO of this cluster for 8 years now, and the scale of growth is really unprecedented in the cleantech industry at this stage, and that comes from different aspects, like the massive funds that are on the table, the climate targets, the legislation that is favorable to renewables now, and the investors' appetite. Now, on top of this, we have a set of tensions at the same time. For example, due to this window of opportunity in the cleantech industry, large corporates, even from other ecosystems like retail or investment funds, are headhunting the qualified professionals from SMEs, which actually are on the brink of scaling up and making the most of this opportunity that is opening now with the green recovery. But even more importantly, the biggest challenge is the actual implementation, the installation of those 10,000 megawatts only in solar and energy, plus all the projects that need to be implemented in the batteries, in the smart grids, in the electric vehicle, in the Internet of Energy that is being applied to industries and to cities and to buildings, all these in the green recoveries. We need qualified professionals there. Now, the low-hanging fruit is to reskill and upskill professionals from sectors affected by the pandemic or from traditional sectors that are shifting to the low-carbon economy. But more importantly, we think that training the youth, the cities, and attracting them to this sector as a trend-setting and exciting one is the high-hanging fruit, but also where the opportunity is and the solution. Now, to ignite action here from our cluster, where the music is played here to shape the energy transition and the reskilling revolution. We have recently launched our Valencian Pact for Skills with a manifesto for sustainable development of cleantech energies
where we take a commitment from the business side, more than 100 businesses, about 80 mayors and the regional government, to really reskill and upskill professionals close to where the projects are being built, and in close collaboration with municipalities, with vet centers, with citizen union as well. And we need more of this. We need pacts, regional, local pacts for skills at European level to raise the vibration of Europe in this reskilling revolution. But we also launched another project very recently, which is the Energy Plaza, which is a marketplace that unites offer and demand, but especially trains the citizens, the SMEs staff, but also the staff at cities, small municipalities in the energy transition. And we aim to train one in 3 citizens in the Valencian region over the next period. Now, to conclude, we need, in our view, we definitely need brokers in this revolution, because this reskilling and upskilling wave is not happening by magic. We need to facilitate what is needed, where is needed, and here clusters play a key role. We need, secondly, to work collectively. We need alliances and to work systemically across sector. And third, in all this, we need a bold, holistic, multidimensional leadership. We need to become conscious of the change and of the challenge, and we need to change mindset, and clusters and ecosystem at regional level play a key role, and they need to see themselves as leaders in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bianca, for this comment. Yes, we need skills brokers, and we need leaders who so we can follow, skills leaders to follow. Thank you very much for your comment. Let's move over to our final speaker in this discussion, which is Erwin. And I would like to ask you, Erwin, what would you recommend, and what would be your recommendations in this post-COVID pandemic outlook for technology, jobs and skills, in a situation where skills gaps are really increasing? And please also give us some views of the role of the stakeholders, including policymakers, from your point. So please go live.
Thank you, John. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be here at the conference. Let me address your questions from 2 points of view. First, a very high historical level, and then a more detailed level based on a recently concluded task force conducted at MIT. At a historical level, there is really nothing surprising here. We are in the early stages of a historical transition from the industrial economy of the 19th and 20th century to a new kind of 21st century digital economy, which only really started with the advent of the internet about 30 years ago. If you look at the transition in the industrial economy, in 1800, only about 12% of the world's population was literate. Literacy grew slowly over the next 150 years to 21% in 1900, 36% in 1950, before rising rapidly in the second half of the 20th century. However, the countries that advanced the most were those that invested in universal primary education at the turn of the 20th century, and later on, the countries that invested in the next level of education as technological breakthroughs require more training, with the advent of electricity, cars, airplanes, and so on. And in fact, if you look at how the US became the very advanced country it became, especially after World War II, is because it had the highest percentage of high school graduates, it had major investments in R&D, and so on. So post-pandemic, what we are seeing is that the digital revolution is absolutely accelerating. We may not know exactly what will happen, but there is universal agreement that the pandemic has accelerated the transition to digital by years and years in months. And therefore, this continuous evolution to the digital economy is more important than ever. Let me now briefly mention the MIT Task Force on the Work of the Future that was commissioned by MIT President Rafael Reif in the spring of 2018 and issued its final report in November of 2020. You can find the report in workofthefuture.mit.edu, all one word. What the report said is that amidst a technological ecosystem delivering rising productivity and an economy generating plenty of jobs, there was a labor market in which the fruits of these advances were so unequally distributed, so skewed toward the most educated people that the rest were left behind. And as we have seen in the US and in some of the European countries, when people get left behind, we see major societal implications. Bad things happen. Now, the task force also found that while the technological change is replacing existing work, it's also creating new work. It's not eliminating work altogether, but it's absolutely transforming the nature of work. So very few people will be out of a job, but the vast majority of people have to prepare for new jobs. The task force also found that these technological changes are unfolding gradually, which means that between now and let's say 2030, we have time to prepare and address those changes. And third, the task force found that the key reason while this labor productivity had not translated in broad increases in income is primarily because our labor market institutions and policies have fallen into disrepair, especially in the US and maybe in other advanced economies. So therefore, we must work together between government, the private sector, and academia to do what needs to be done in this historical transition to a digital economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you, for great sharing, insightful comments based upon your experience, but not least also visions for the future. I think we now move into a kind of a discussion, ask questions, and I will say already now, in the end here, I would have your comment on how do you, on a personal level, what has you taken into account to be, I mean, you are an expert, you are a leader, and how do you apply personally upskilling and lifelong learning? That would be great to hear, I think, for all of us. But go back to some real questions. I would start with Bianca, and I would just ask, do you really sense that the clusters and cities and the regions in Europe, are they ready to kick off for what you dream of? That's my first question. And second, will there be skills plans on regional and city level, do you think, in Europe? If so, when? The floor is yours, or the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Very interesting questions. We could talk about this for the next half an hour. I will try to give a very brief answer. Are they ready? I think they are getting ready as we speak, and we need to do it, and we need to work around the clock. We need to do it fast because the digital and the green transition, the twin transitions, are not waiting. They need to be accelerated. And as Irving said, this is accelerating, and this is accelerating also as we speak. So I do think that, for example, clusters, and as a member of the industrial of the expert group of the Commission on Industrial Clusters, we put this on the at the heart of the clusters, the reskilling and the upskilling. I firmly believe that reskilling and upskilling can be tackled by clusters and ecosystem best because they can create these centers for excellence in reskilling and upskilling of professionals. They know the needs from the sector, from the SMEs. They know the trends. They know where this is going forward, and they also have access, and they are the intermediary between all these stakeholders. They interconnect them. But the big issue here is how the 3,000 existing clusters in EU, how we hit every corners of EU with this type of inspiration and leadership so that clusters, ecosystems, cities, regions become conscious that they can lead this change and create a wider movement around themselves. So let me just put it very, very briefly. Clusters are also an ecosystem. We are all on a transformation process. We need to move beyond old schemes, traditional schemes, looking at about how we can create, absorb subsidies and accelerate projects towards how we can be transformative in a systemic way. And regions, cities, clusters, ecosystems are the best place to flourish this because there's a texture, there's a fabric to suit on for SMEs here, connecting with vet centers, connecting with universities, connecting all this together. And let's be honest, at the moment, business and university, they don't really speak too much to each other. We need to provoke this. We need to trigger this debate and put it on the table, and someone needs to take the leadership. And regarding the skills plans, as I said, let's take cities. There's the Intelligent Cities Challenge, which is one of the top initiatives in this sense, and works with towards the decarbonization scenario of European cities. Our cluster is actually part of this quest and of this journey, and is advising and mentoring cities to orchestrate this change. Cities are becoming more aware of the need to lead this reskilling and upskilling, and there are some cities that are taking the lead, including small and medium-sized cities, where actually innovation chapter is totally new, and innovation looks differently, and they can also take the lead. So I think that there's a big wave at the moment in Europe, where it starts bottom up. And I think that we need to have a ripple effect within the cities, within the clusters, within the ecosystems and regions, and we need to head towards overlapping ripples of change on reskilling and upskilling, starting from this local level, so that we can raise the vibration of Europe and take the lead globally in this change.
Thank you very much. Let me ask Theos, linked to this adoption issue and question we have had around here for quite some time. What would you say about universities around the globe? How is the process and what's the speed of making this transition to adapt to a new reality in all kind of dimensions, where we hold so many new players in the market to give knowledge, skills, wisdom, and so on? So what would be your comment on what you have seen and sensed the last years?
Yeah, thank you. Well, there is different types of universities, of course. I'm talking mostly on the behalf of business schools, but not undergraduates or graduate schools more broadly. I mean, one of the main challenges is also what building on what Bianca mentioned, is the link between academia and industry.
Yes.
Lots of the topics that we need upskilling for are very fast moving, especially around digital. And lots of the knowledge and expertise of what's happening today out there is not necessarily in academia, which is sometimes slower to catch up in some ways, right? But also at the same time, it's catching up mega trends instead of hype in some ways. So creating these links between academia and industry closer and making this porous exchange between the two, of course, is key. Now, having said this, you mentioned also new entrants. I mean, it's interesting to observe that, for example, EdTech innovation has been really booming. I mean, especially now with COVID, this was like a big increase on funding of this kind of startups, which some of them became unicorns already. I think the total amount of money spent on EdTech startups companies has kind of doubled basically in a year, more or less. With interestingly, the biggest increase in investments coming in China. It's interesting to observe this difference between different regions, Europe, China, US also. So we'll see a lot of new players coming in which will also create competition for existing models or business models or university models, if you like, in the coming years, being accelerated with because of both COVID and the digital innovations happening.
So let me then now go to the fact that I asked you a question, and you just need 15 seconds maybe to reply to that question. So we can start with let's go from the last one. Irvin, what's your personal decisions on how you become a real skills leader, a thought leader for the future, and lifelong learning and upskilling? 15 seconds. We can't hear you.
I worked at IBM for many, many years, and I finished my work at IBM in 2007, but I've continued to advance and keep learning things because that's the only way to keep myself relevant. Yeah. So you have to just keep learning new topics, and I do that often through my blog.
Oh, yeah. You have a very interesting blog. Please look into Irvin's blog, by the way. Very good. Thank you so much. Bianca, what's your personal take, and how do you act as a thought leader in this space?
Well, I work in the clean tech industry. You know, if you don't get upskilled continuously, and if you're not immersed in the lifelong learning, it's just you're out of business, basically, because we speak now about hydrogen, but not only about hydrogen, we speak about the gray hydrogen, about the green hydrogen, about the blue hydrogen, we speak about energy, Internet of Energy. It's just such a intense and such a exciting part that you cannot do your job, basically, if you don't get new skills every day. And what I'm doing in action, in practice, is actually that not only me, but also my entire team, weekly, we have a training on new trends on the sector. So I think that is at least the minimum. What I do think that it's very important for everybody is the leadership. And I stress this because we need a totally new leadership. We are overmanaged but underled, and I think everybody needs to take consciously a leadership in what is doing to really create change and impact on the ground. Great, thank you, very, very well said. Thank you so much. So who is next? Maybe Walter. You're unmuted.
Yeah, now I'm mute. So what I can say, I have a privileged situation for 3 reasons. The first reason, I'm working a long time in a research center. We are developing new technology on one side, and we are applying this new technology. So we are very much in the forefront of new technology. So that's really a privilege. Yes. A privilege for myself on one side. But second, there is a DNA at Fraunhofer, you know, to work very closely with businesses or with industry. So that's a very important issue for us. So, and that means learning is vice versa. We are learning a lot from bottom up, from company side, what are really the needs, for example, they have, and second, what we can offer, what are our services to them. So that means we have a lot of experience, what's going on in the company level. So, and third, that's important is why the reason I said promoting working environments. Yes. We know how the people are working, for example, and how we should deal with this situation, and how can we improve this working environment.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. And then we have a short comment from Mary and last Theos. 15 seconds each, please. Mary.
Sorry. Yes, very quickly. Well, I work with IT professionals, and the key part of my job is to persuade them to continually upskill and reskill themselves. So I learn along with them. I persuade them, and I convince them and talk to them about learning and reskilling, and I persuade them to do so. I'm also a great advocate of the notion that your education, your work life, and your leisure activities should be constantly intermingled throughout your life, not finish your education, then have your work, and then have your leisure time in retirement. It should all be blended together. That's how I look at life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And finally, Theos,
I'll be very brief given the time. I'm lucky to learn new things by working with new people. I find always interesting to learn from others. So if you meet new people, you start working on new projects with them.
Yes.
For me, that has always been the best way to learn.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So be at the right place, meet the right people, and just go with the flow and be a leader. That's what I hear. Okay. Now we need to see the conclusions from the result of the polls. And we will ask the team here to put on this on the screen. So you can see what are the results of this, you as a jury. What is the most important for reaching the ambitious up and reskilling targets in the vision? And we can see here as well, very well balanced. Collective commitment and focus on execution, better conditions, incentives for training take-up of people, and better training of systems, guidance and tools, and smarter matching solutions for skills, tasks, and jobs. It's kind of the same, which means we have to do this. All of it four, we have to do it. And let's do it now. And we are committed to do that, I think. Next question was about how should up and reskilling measures to be targeted to maximize their effect on the labor force. And here we see clearly 30% coordination at all levels. That's the simple one, you know, coordination at all levels. And a combination of all above. And then we have the 27% here, sectoral transregional coordination to ensure sector skills focus and ensure value chain benefits. The new value chains are a key for all of us. Let's discuss it another day. And then we have the 23%, individual company should be incentivized better to invest a given budget. Maybe an outcome of the skills plan. And 20% says regional transsectoral coordination to include training hubs to help SMEs. SMEs is another really important area, of course, a very important segment, cross-industry, and so on and so forth. So this is what you said, and we thank you for what you have been sharing with us in this poll. And let us now move on and try to end this conference. And I would say upskilling and reskilling is a very serious challenge, that we sense. An enormous thing for individuals. We are all individuals. We are in different industries and we are in different sectors. And we are in society. We probably need maybe a Marshall Plan for skills in one way or another. But then I can say, let me say thanks to the European Commission and all the people on board here in this conference today for moving ahead with such a speed and so many good efforts and programs and processes and policies and actions, including not least the Pact for Skills and the industrial strategy. And the Commission are also, I think, making a huge amount or huge sum of money available to member states in their multi-annual, I would say, financial framework. I think it's 21 to 27. And the conference has shown that many stakeholders and actors are already moving ahead in this direction, which is great. We've been at good speed to help to create the smart workforce for the future, increasing the European competitiveness and increasing also the talent pool. So from me as a moderator for today, thank you so much to all of you, not least speakers, panelists, participants. Great to be together with you and shape the future of skills. And let me then end with saying, dare to think long term, a vision for 2030, but keep the feet on the ground. Smart implementing, large scale up and reskilling programs. And dare to allocate sufficient, efficient resources for up and reskilling programs. Show the way, show the money. There's a ROI which is far beyond expectation we heard of. And dare to lead, and people will follow you, because people follow leaders who energizes, based upon personal T-shaped skills, I would guess, intellectually, socially, emotionally, and all other dimensions, which we maybe not have time to speak about. But I would say emotionally is a key thing. So dare to share the best practice and inspire innovative best option. That is a good thing. Best practice moving into best option. So the day is over, and tomorrow we meet again. The same time, the same link, the same information for the access, but we have a completely new program. Fresh, great speakers, great themes, interesting dialogues. So I would say thank you so much for your participation and see you tomorrow. But also be sure that you can download the right material, videos, and also this thing linked to the upcoming reports, slides, and so on. So you get all you needed. We well prepared for tomorrow. Again, thank you very much. Participate then. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Digital transformation impacts how we live, work, and learn. Technologies can help us to recover from the pandemic, but we need digital talent to make the most of them. If you agree, visit the Digital Skills and Jobs platform, the home of European initiatives on digital skills and jobs. Together with the Digital Europe programme and the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition, the platform fosters European expertise in advanced digital technologies. It will help you to digitally upskill yourself, your employees, students, or people in your community. The platform offers training and funding opportunities, national and EU actions, good practices and resources, data and insights, an active community, news and events, and much more. To put it simply, the platform helps you find what you need and connects you with whom you need. Join the community and contribute to building the home of digital skills in Europe.